Greetings, my friends and relatives. It's a great honor to be your MC for this year's National Center for Truth and Reconciliation's Survivor Holiday Special. I'm Jerry the Big Bear Barrett. Before we get started, we will connect with Elder Harry Bone, who will open today's show in a good way.
Bonjour. Jesus Napinikas, Mikinak Joanimik, Sagitaw Kong Bionase. I'm an Anishinaabe elder from Manitoba. I'm very honored to provide an open guiding prayer for this important celebrations that we're doing. So Gichimi guys for the invitation. As is our tradition, we say our prayers in the languages of our people. Here in the prayers is Anishinaabe language. So that's the prayer that I'll provide. It's a prayer that my grandmother taught me so many years ago. It's a short version of a longer version. So listen to the words, it's Anishinaabe words. Agijemaridu, Amijoin Mishnam, Goodnob Mishnam, Miganab Mishnam, Nashkin Mishnam, Gijoin Chigain, Giminatsuin, Mimagi Masteba Tamang, and Ingimish Chigang, Kagishiminigo is young. Amanomio Shaka, Tonogamish Chigang Nongum, Nabinoti Nanik Jimetama, to the Otonan Kagishiminigo is young, Goidishniga, Galishmacho, Mishonis. As you know, Magabu Katamang, we are kidding Nakutami, Gamachibagit Namang, coming to Isnian, coming to Nikuang, Kinagamagan, Pasiguim, Mishonis, Nakutamin. Wabanu Motigagi Pijimijian, Kaning Mishigagi Time Nakutamin, Shan Motigagi Shiknamo Yang, and Ingimish Chigang Nakutamin, and Gabion Motigagi Nagatamot, also when Chigain Yang, you can ask so in Mishomisananik, no Commissionanik, Nakumananik, so when Chigain Nagatamot, Mishomis. She go to get no Gamishimaja, Ganishiki, Nakutamin, Kinago, Manojimin, Kinago, Jimijimentamang, and Mikagi Giton, Kagishimini Quasian, Mishomis Kinago, Nabinochi, and Kanishwedishniga, Jimijimentama, Pedishiotanan, Ashikono Magapico Katamang, Mikagi Gitaminogum, Manokinochibis in the mot, your Chaka Tonogitoinian, Mishomis, Kamishkinamo Yang, Hamigimi Kituan, Mishoani Mishnam, Mishoani Mishnam, Mishoani Mishnam, Miquetch.
Thank you, Elder Harry Bone, for your words and guiding prayer in the opening of NCTR's Holiday Special.
Bonjour, mon nom est Luc Lainé, je suis de la Première Nation Huron-Wendat. J'ai le plaisir d'être votre co-animateur pour cette émission. Alors que l'année touche à sa fin, nous passons du temps à réfléchir et à nous préparer pour les grandes fêtes et les réunions de famille. Il y a de l'excitation et de l'anticipation autour de la reconnexion avec les êtres chers. Mais bien sûr, les événements de 2020 et de 2021 n'ont pas montré beaucoup de respect pour nos rassemblements traditionnels. Nous pouvons dire que cette pandémie mondiale nous a fait prendre conscience de la nécessité de chérir ce qui est important et essentiel. Elle nous a montré ce qui a le plus de sens dans nos vies, d'être reconnaissant pour ce que nous avons et pour les personnes avec qui nous partageons ces moments.
We want to thank you for joining us in a way that's becoming a little familiar to us now, gathering virtually. Everyone nowadays is Zooming. Yeah, I became a pro Zoomer. Zoom, zoom, zoom. I'm zooming everywhere. From the look at my green screen background, I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere. And it's awesome what technology can show us. You know, hey, even our old people, our elders, they're getting on board too. We even connected with Skinny Cuckoo to join this program. She seemed excited after reading the email, asking her to be with us today.
I got an email the other day, and then they said, Skinny Cuckoo, we want you to do an event. And I'm thinking, how did they even get my email? Never mind. But then they said, we want you to do some videos for the elders, for the survivors. And then they said, maybe we could give you some bingo money. Oh, and then I was thinking, why didn't you just say that to begin with? So then I said, I guess I could make some videos for you with like, what do you want me to do? I'm starting to be a big deal, you know. I'm on YouTube. I'm trending, they said. Trending? I never say that right. Trending. I got over 100 followers, you know. That's like 1/3 my community. Holy man. That I was thinking, what kind of event is this? It's a winter solstice. I said it's so cold. You know what happens when it first starts to snow, eh? People forget how to drive. Gee, look, you just gotta drive according to the weather. They just go crazy. Next thing you know, there's 10 vehicles in the ditch. And there's me. They're laughing at me just because I'm driving slow. I said, at least I'm gonna stay on the road. Holy man, you don't see me in the ditch. Speed up now, boy!
Oh, wow! Vous avez beaucoup d'adeptes. Conduis prudemment, Skinny Coucou. En parlant de cela, pour assurer la santé et la sécurité de tous, nous sommes heureux que vous soyez ici avec nous pour regarder le spécial Vacances virtuelles des survivants du Centre national pour la vérité et la réconciliation de cette année. Vous pouvez regarder les différents segments sur le site principal ou sur la chaîne YouTube du NCTR. Partagez-le avec tout le monde. Il y a beaucoup d'excellents segments dans l'émission d'aujourd'hui.
Bonjour. Recently, we have all had to adapt and learn how to gather differently. Meanwhile, we know the value of gathering together, whether in person or virtually. As this is my first year in this role, I have taken on the vision and mission of the NCTR with great humility and determination, where, together with the NCTR staff, we have been hard at work to serve in this critical area. Part of why we exist is to be a place of learning and to encourage continued dialogue where the truths of the residential school experience will be honored and kept safe for future generations. In the past year, we have accomplished some significant milestones. This was a significant year for all of us when the 215 innocent children were found in unmarked graves on the former site of the Kamloops Indian Residential School. And that number grew and is still growing as many efforts are currently being implemented to bring children home. We have begun the second phase in the National Student Memorial Register to continue the research into finding all the children who did not return home. The NCTR Survivor Circle lobbied for the first Reconciliation Day, as there is a collective responsibility of all Canadians to implement the 94 calls to action for true reconciliation. We also unveiled the Survivor Flag to mark the first official National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. The Survivor's Flag represents the thoughts, emotions, experiences, and hopes expressed by survivors who have shared their truths about residential schools. The flag affirms commitment to the remembrance of the lives lost and the lives impacted by the residential school system. We launched a new website and an archive database, and we had a groundbreaking ceremony for the placement of our new building where we took some time to mark this day. NCTR received international awards and Canadian acknowledgements with Every Child Matters Reconciliation Through Education. This program was created to reach students and teachers across the country to educate on the truth of the residential school system, its legacy, and reconciliation. The NCTR also released the first of its kind reconciliation broadcast, including providing an impressive week-long program for educators and the public. The Truth and Reconciliation Week was an initiative in which we invited students, educators, and the public to participate in a week-long program. This was a week where we brought Indigenous voices and perspectives into the classroom, an opportunity to fulfill the Truth and Reconciliation Commission Call to Action 62. We also had 50 different workshops offered throughout the week where we successfully reached over 1 million students and general public across Canada. That is significant as we are all learning, growing, and walking together while taking action. It was encouraging to see so many people participating as it reflects that there is a commitment to reconciliation. This upcoming gathering is no exception, and we are happy to have you join us. Today will include various segments for survivors, youth, allies, friends, and communities. This is the time of year where we would traditionally connect, enjoy each other's company, and spend time with each other. But this day is for you, and each segment has been broken down into different videos so you can go back to view them when you want to rewatch or share with others in learning how to cook or bead, sharpen a few jigging moves, or listening to some music and inspirational stories from survivors. I am thankful to the NCTR staff, the Governing Circle, the Survivors Circle, the partners, and the University of Manitoba for their significant contributions made this year. I am excited to see what the new year will bring for the NCTR and all of us. Happy holidays from our fire to yours, and we hope you enjoy today's Survivor Holiday Special. Miigwech.
Thank you, Stephanie, for letting us all know all the wonderful work NCTR has accomplished and still committing to do. The Inuit drum dance is performed to the rhythmic beating of a drum made from caribou skin. The drum dance songs carry the stories, legends, and traditions of the people. Our next holiday message is brought to you by one of our partners. Please welcome Christine Lothbaum, the VP of Indigenous Affairs and Cultural Heritage Parks, and Sarah Jerome from Parks Canada Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada.
Sarah Jerome no Northwest Territories, I go nan kakwits and a hotanihi. A hick a chet ishi that could know. She go on a handshake with a tradishi. Cheat at isokon beats and a high shook. She could a hadelchi. At and dot a castronal tins at good e. Go on a tan hisani than ganjet castronal tin. In chitna tradition, and kakwits at shit. Shayo one cat no train and no edge at Kakuakuts at the Guadalajara. Nets or the chan cat could chance and it's or the queency quit and die. I couldn't check Kako and not Chinese and gadget a cotty she in. Go chi, I could know. Yen chi. Unchit nan kakwan, the chin ka ona tanshe titli, kwa ket atakwa ay. Nokatrin and le katko kwa, ay ken chichi, nokanan kakan dakatano, le kat takwati, hakwi droven kuranchik kwiso. Tenet ot a tree ko hit and die ko shit tension of when they take it in the eye. Said no ancho cut ni hano hako quantac. Net ot a die ko no queen see quit and die the chan cut. I cook it to quant out a hair caught the hit. Tenet ot a queen see ko hit and die. Net ot a needs a tree hit and tell I could shit that tension it can no hino try no. Sa doctrine, J survival holiday special. Kahat sa kuno ay kushit no harkot at no chatat ni tikano hit and it's at a queen see ko hit and day kushit tak can chet no hok age go tikano hit. Jita Parks Canada go no historic sites and monuments board. National Center on Truth and Reconciliation. I cut that good at Jadron Salad at Chokot and Agueta that we should show only that Seneta no Haveli. Merci.
Bonjour d'Ottawa-Gatineau. Je tiens d'abord à souligner que le territoire d'où je vous salue est le territoire traditionnel non cédé du peuple algonquin. Les Algonquins vivent sur le territoire depuis des temps immémoriaux et je suis reconnaissante d'avoir l'occasion d'être présente ici. Je m'appelle Christine Lothbaum, secrétaire de la Commission des lieux et monuments historiques du Canada. Et au nom de la Commission et de Parc Canada, j'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue à chacun d'entre vous à cette activité spéciale pour le temps des fêtes, appuyée par un partenariat entre Parc Canada et le Centre national pour la vérité et la réconciliation. L'envénement d'aujourd'hui vous est présenté à la fin d'une année très lourde, une année au cours de laquelle les yeux des Canadiens et du monde entier ont été largement ouverts sur la réalité et l'histoire incontestable des pensionnats autochtones au Canada. Le besoin de guérison est bien réel et chacun se trouve à une étape différente dans son parcours de guérison. À quelques jours du solstice d'hiver, c'est le moment de se réconforter dans toutes les belles cultures et traditions autochtones que chacun d'entre vous représente. Pour certains, c'est le début de la saison de partage des contes lorsque nous nous connectons les uns aux autres pour parler et écouter. N'oubliez pas de tendre la main aux autres et de vous rapprocher d'eux. Et profitez également de ce moment pour prendre soin de vous. Bientôt, la lumière du jour reviendra et une nouvelle vie renaîtra, alors que les cycles des saisons se poursuivent. J'espère que vous trouveriez la rencontre d'aujourd'hui agréable et apaisante, alors que nous nous préparons pour la saison hivernale. En mon nom personnel, au nom du Parc Canada et de la Commission des lieux et monuments historiques du Canada, je vous souhaite à tous une période des fêtes passable et sécuritaire.
I was telling my old man you gotta set up the Christmas tree. I said, I need that Christmas tree. And he said, you're always saying you can do everything. I said, well, I can. It's gotta be special. It's a winter solstice. I need that Christmas tree up. Oh, that tree isn't behind everything. I gotta do everything. Man, how am I gonna get this out? better be worth it. That better. I wonder if that's gonna touch the ceiling. Hello, Johnny. Remember that time I took you to town? I need somebody to come decorate my tree. What? Hello? Oh, sick. So what? You could do your project another day. It's due tomorrow. You're just saying that. So I can see these kids. Hello? Francis, I need you to come decorate my tree. What do you mean for what? I'll make you some soup and bannock. Not even. Fine then, make your own. Answer the phone. These people. This is why I don't like people. You're lying. I know she's there. Put her on the phone. Tell her I got that $20. Oh, hello? Hello, Sharon? Yeah, I got a favor to ask. You think you could come decorate my Christmas tree? What do you mean? It's just a small tree. What? Well, maybe it's medium. Well, it's taller than me, but you know I'm short. Hello? Hello, Gertrude. Oh, remember that time you stayed in that haunted hotel and they had a big tree in the front and you said, I wish I had a big tree like that. I would just decorate it. Remember that? Yeah, I got a big tree. You want to come decorate it? Yeah, you're going to come? Boy, that's a good one. Yeah, I'll give you some bannock for sure. Okay, thank you, miigwech. Okay, I'll see you soon. Yee, I don't have to do it now. You better do it right, that Gertrude. Never mind.
Please make welcome our next guest, Beneze Ogichida Anakawe, Dina Casius. They're from the Fishing Lake First Nation and will share a spoken word poem called Matriarchal Strong.
My mentality is crazy. My emotions are real. I'm spiritually strong. My mouth does not know when to shut. And yes, it's caused by years and years of trauma, oppression, assimilation, biological warfare, genocide. This is blood memory. I carry it and I carry it well. Here's the thing though, I am a warrior. I've always been from the day I was born into this realm. I was told it was the ancestors who sent me here. Why? To put in work in order for change, to help in decolonizing, for energy change, for policy change, to fight for the freedoms of my brothers and sisters. I am a warrior. I look at myself, a spiritual being, a spiritual gangster, a spiritual warrior. I see this as perseverance, resilience, while relentlessly fighting to attain that honorable spot within that sky world. Although my time isn't now, so much work to do, so much time to correct. This will only come when I'm ready, helping me to endure lessons of how to dominate, embrace that darkness within and around. This, for me, is what you call spiritual warfare, spirit within. I know I have 1 million and maybe more warrior spirits, ancestors, gods and goddesses, infinitely within. Blood memory that's pumping my heart, that's feeding my soul, that's strengthening my mind, that walks tall with me, that stands strong with me, that allows me to smile while I'm walking through the darkness. I'm still here and I'm still shining bright, listening to the spirits whispering within. Keep going. am a matriarch. I am a queen. Yes, I am. With those of you who continuously trying so hard to shut down the brightness and darkness I bring, be careful, as I've birthed 4 courageous warriors to walk through with me on this journey while the world's on my shoulders. I have sisters who's fought the same fight I fought for many, many years while showing no fear. Diabolical wickedness, time and time again. And guess what? We are still here, matriarchal strong.
The filming and performance of We Won't Forget You was created by the students from Scalep School of Excellence. It was written, recorded, and filmed with students. It offers a small glimpse of the impact of residential schools from the perspective of children, and with the impactful message of sitting in the dark, and now we are letting in the light.
But it really wasn't. Now we look ahead, we can start the drumming. Learning language through song and dance. The pain they felt, let's honor that. By being great and keeping track of what elders teach, let's walk the path.
To Shuswap Nation, the future is in our hands. It may take some patience. It is our home, it is our land. In a lifetime we'll celebrate who we are like every day. There's so much knowledge in the way we live our lives, so we're giving thanks.
We sing and rap for the mission. The destination is living and innovation for the children.
In a lifetime we'll celebrate who we are like every day. There's so much knowledge in the way we live our lives, so we're giving thanks.
We won't forget you. We won't forget you. You were sitting in the dark, now we're letting in the light. Oh cow cookie, oh cow cookie. Found our love, now everything is fine. You were sitting in the dark, now we're letting in the light. Our school's a place we never forget London. We won't forget you. London. We won't forget you. You were sitting in the dark, now we're letting in the light. Oh, cow cook beat, oh, cow cook beat. Found a love, now everything is fine. You were sitting in the dark, now we're letting in the light. You were sitting in the dark, now we're letting in the light. You were sitting in the dark, now we're letting in the light.
Somebody said you're gonna get that Susan a Glukark. That's a good one. My daughter's trying to tell me that she met that lady one day. She said, you're never gonna guess who I saw at the hotel here in Winnipeg. That singer, OCM, Susan Glukark. I said, you're lying. You never met her. She said, no, I met her. I met her skinny cuckoo. I even got a picture I'll show you. And then she showed me that picture. Holy man, I never thought that day would come to meet someone like that. That's a lucky one. I should bring her with me to bingo if she's that lucky. Oh, maybe I'll win the loony pot. What do you think?
Old toy trains, little toy tracks, little toy drums coming from a sack, carried by a man dressed in white and red. Little boy, don't you think it's time you were in bed? Close your eyes, listen to the skies. All is calm, all is well. Soon you'll hear Kris Kringle and the jingle bells, bringing old toy trains, little toy tracks, little toy drums coming from a sack, carried by a man dressed in white and red. Little boy, don't you think it's time you were in bed? Kadong akulo, koversung namin, koversut serner kotit, saimani kaklotillo, koversung na utillugulo, magkukto kotibut, ikaw matya katarlabon, ikaw manek pagudlo, gotiw, ing nene, ing mini, tunilawman, koversung namin, saimani kakubluta, koversut siya kublutalo. Close your eyes, listen to the skies. All is calm, all is well. Soon you'll hear Kris Kringle and the jingle bells, bringing old toy trains, little toy tracks, little toy drums coming from a sack, carried by a man dressed in white and red. Little boy, don't you think it's time you were in bed? Carried by a man dressed in white and red. Little boy, don't you think it's time you were in bed? Upinach Jisusi Nutarak Manakay Pigivatigun Pangan Nunakulutinu Piuliuma blutan Piuliuma blutan Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child. Holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory stream from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Unuak, upinak, aingilik, diliyak, rilang miyugasak tuwid, Tau santid ilag iluhid, imngik puji sutakva. Imngik puji sutakva. Sleep in heavenly
Avec cette pandémie, beaucoup d'entre nous ont regardé de nombreuses émissions de télévision, des films ou se sont adonnés à de nouveaux passe-temps comme la cuisine, le travail du bois ou des choses vraiment cool comme apprendre à perler. Julie Desrochers, une femme métisse de Winnipeg au Manitoba, se joint à nous aujourd'hui. L'une des leçons les plus importantes qu'elle a apprises est que le perlage est un moyen de guérison, un acte de résistance et une partie intrinsèque de l'identité métisse. En tant que fière femme métisse, enseignante et partenaire de la petite entreprise Prairie Owl Beads, elle croit en l'importance de partager l'art du perlage pour continuer à représenter la créativité, la force et la résilience de sa nation. Veuillez vous joindre à moi pour accueillir Julie Desrochers.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Julie Desrochers et aujourd'hui, je suis ici pour vous partager un peu de mon histoire avec le perlage métis, mais surtout mes connaissances, ainsi qu'un peu une démonstration sur les étapes pour perler une fleur métisse. Alors, c'est une forme d'art qui est devenue très importante dans ma vie à mesure que j'ai commencé à apprendre de plus en plus qui je suis. Mais depuis que j'étais toute petite, mes parents ont toujours mis beaucoup d'emphase sur l'importance de qui nous sommes, l'importance de savoir d'où on vient et qui étaient nos ancêtres, et tous les sacrifices qu'ils ont faits pour que nous puissions être ici aujourd'hui. Pour de nombreuses années, la nation métisse a dû cacher ou même abandonner leur culture et leur façon de vivre pour pouvoir survivre. Les arts, malheureusement, étaient un des premiers aspects de la culture à se faire abriter car elle crée un aspect vraiment visuel et unique par lequel les gens pouvaient être identifiés. N'importe quel vêtement perlé, les ceintures fléchées aux couleurs super vivantes se sont fait ranger et la pratique de ces arts se faisait vraiment en secret si elle se faisait du tout. Maintenant, fiers de notre patrimoine, les Métis du Manitoba pratiquent leur culture de façon ouverte et encouragent le partage de leur culture avec tout ce qu'ils sont prêts à apprendre. Le perlé est un art qui, dans les dernières trentaines d'années, je dirais, reprend beaucoup de vie. Il y a de plus en plus d'artistes qui sont en train de partager leur art et leur travail, et plusieurs qui travaillent à commencer à partager ces arts, vraiment pour assurer qu'ils puissent continuer de créer un lien fort et fier entre nos aînés et notre jeunesse, mais aussi pour créer un lien entre nos ancêtres et tous leurs efforts et ceux qui ont resté courageux vraiment pour que nous puissions être où nous sommes aujourd'hui. Alors moi, j'ai pleinement grandi entourée de ma culture, donc j'ai été vraiment chanceuse de pouvoir apprendre l'art du perlage vers l'âge de 10 ans. Et depuis, j'ai été super fortunée d'avoir l'occasion de travailler avec plusieurs artistes, des aînés, plusieurs mentors au fil des années pour développer mes aptitudes et mes connaissances. J'ai ensuite enseigné le perlage à mes 3 sœurs, tous à différents temps lors des dernières années. Mais nous avons vraiment développé une passion pour cet art et c'est un art qui a créé un lien vraiment fort entre nous comme sœurs. Alors en 2019, on a commencé une petite entreprise ensemble qui s'appelle Prairie Owl Beads. Et puis ensemble, on crée des produits perlés qui incluent des bijoux, mais aussi beaucoup des thèmes traditionnels comme des mocassins, des mitaines, sacs à feu, presque tout ce que tu pourrais perler, on a déjà fait. Nos produits se font distribuer au travers de l'Amérique du Nord. On partage aussi notre art beaucoup au travers d'ateliers qu'on fait vraiment partout autour de la province du Manitoba et beaucoup dans des écoles. Alors, notre mission en tant que fière femme métisse et artiste, c'est d'assurer une continuité du perlé afin qu'elle puisse vraiment continuer à représenter la créativité, la puissance et la ténacité de notre nation. Le perlé, maintenant, se fait produire de façon traditionnelle et moderne et se fait porter avec grande fierté. Maintenant, l'acte du perlé en soi-même est souvent considéré un exercice spirituel dans le sens que ça promouvoit beaucoup de réflexion. Alors, c'est un art qui prend beaucoup de patience, de temps. C'est quelque chose de très précis dans lequel on paie beaucoup d'attention aux détails. Ça prend beaucoup de compassion et certainement beaucoup de concentration, plus que n'importe quoi. Alors, c'est souvent dit que quand on fait un morceau ou on travaille un nouveau morceau, on développe un patron, c'est important de penser à qui ce morceau de perlage est pour, à qui on va le donner en cadeau, à qui on le donne ou pour qui on le fait, parce que vraiment, on veut que le morceau capture qui est cette personne. Alors, le plus qu'on pense à cette personne, le plus de bonnes pensées qu'on a, le mieux notre travail va se faire. Alors, quand on commence à penser de façon négative, c'est là qu'on commence à rencontrer des problèmes dans le travail. Des fois, on a des nœuds dans notre fil, nos aiguilles se brisent, on met les billes sur le mauvais côté de notre patron, des choses comme ça. Alors, c'est vraiment un exercice de patience, mais c'est aussi presque un exercice de méditation. Alors, vraiment, le montant de concentration que ça prend, mais aussi de contrôler nos pensées et de vraiment penser à pourquoi on fait ceci, pour qui on le fait. Ça va aider à créer un produit final qui est semblable ou pareil à ce qu'on a en tête ou ce qu'on envisionne quand on commence un morceau. Alors, ça, c'est toutes les choses qui sont importantes à considérer quand on entreprend un projet, mais c'est vraiment aussi important à penser que c'est un art qui peut apporter pour nous beaucoup de joie de cette façon, mais aussi qui peut nous aider à rester dans un espace positif. Alors, c'est vraiment une pratique qui peut nous aider avec notre santé mentale à nous garder dans un bon espace. Mais toutes ces choses offrent aussi, le perlage offre aussi vraiment une occasion et un espace pour créer des liens vraiment importants entre notre jeunesse et nos aînés. Alors, ça crée un espace où nos aînés peuvent partager leurs histoires, leurs connaissances de la culture avec nos jeunes pour vraiment assurer que le perlage persévère et se fait passer à la prochaine génération pour vraiment continuer à représenter qui nous sommes et d'où on vient. Alors, j'aimerais maintenant vous montrer les étapes du perlage métis. Alors, on va commencer avec un simple patron. C'est juste une fleur à 3 pétales. Alors, je vais changer mon écran pour vous montrer. Alors, aujourd'hui, on va travailler juste une simple fleur à 3 pétales et on va utiliser 3 couleurs de billes. Alors, j'ai un jaune, un bleu et un vert. Et ce sont toutes des billes en vert de taille 10. Et pour pouvoir travailler avec ces billes, on va utiliser une aiguille aussi de taille 10 et un fil blanc en nylon. Et la raison qu'on utilise un fil en nylon, c'est parce que c'est un fil qui est assez fort. Alors, peu importe combien de tension on met dessus, typiquement, elle ne va pas briser. Et ensuite, on travaille sur un morceau de laine blanc ici. Et comme vous pouvez voir, j'ai juste dessiné mon patron et je l'ai agrafé. Alors, quand je réfère à mon morceau ici, le haut, c'est le côté où le papier est agrafé et le bas, c'est le côté opposé. Maintenant, il y a aussi plusieurs techniques de perlage métis. On peut travailler avec une seule aiguille ou on peut travailler avec 2. Normalement, avec les débutants, je commence avec une. C'est un peu plus facile à gérer, mais il y a des avantages aux 2 versions. Alors, pour commencer avec une aiguille, je dois mettre un nœud dans mon fil et la façon que je fais ça, c'est que je vais tenir mon fil entre mon index et mon aiguille et je vais prendre le bout et je vais l'envelopper autour de l'aiguille 5 à 8 fois. Ensuite, je vais pincer ça avec mon pouce et je vais tirer jusqu'au bout. Et ça va me créer un nœud. Et ça devrait être assez pour tenir pour maintenant. Alors, pour commencer, on va faire le centre de la fleur. Alors, je vais monter du bas de mon patron, aussi proche que possible du centre du cercle. Une fois que j'ai trouvé la bonne place, je vais tirer jusqu'à ce que mon nœud frappe le dos. Et je vais ramasser une seule couleur, une seule bille de la couleur que j'aimerais mettre au centre. Alors ici, je ramasse une seule bille jaune. Et normalement, c'est plus facile de ramasser les billes avec l'aiguille plutôt que mettre les billes sur l'aiguille. Lorsque je l'ai ramassée, je vais laisser cette bille tomber jusqu'au papier. Et ensuite, je vais redescendre, si possible, dans le même trou où j'ai monté. Et encore une fois, je vais tirer l'aiguille ici jusqu'à ce que ma bille à serrer contre le papier. Et là, ça va être considéré la première rangée. Maintenant, ce que je vais faire, c'est que je vais construire sur ou autour de cette bille, je vais travailler vers l'extérieur. Alors, je vais remonter sur n'importe quel côté. À l'instant, ça n'a aucune différence. Mais je veux que mon aiguille soit aussi proche que possible de cette bille du centre. Et là, je vais tirer jusqu'au bout. Et là, je vais ramasser 7 billes cette fois. Alors, encore une fois, en utilisant mon aiguille, je ramasse. Lorsque j'ai mes 7 billes, je vais les pousser sur mon aiguille et les laisser tomber jusqu'au papier. Et d'ici, encore une fois, si possible, je vais redescendre dans le même trou où je suis montée. Si ce n'est pas le même trou, ce qui est important, c'est de redescendre aussi proche que possible de cet endroit. Alors, je vais descendre et je vais tirer jusqu'à ce que j'ai créé une petite loupe ici. Alors, pour maintenant, elle remonte du papier. Ce que je dois faire, c'est que je dois la redescendre avec mon pouce. Alors, je pousse les billes autour de la bille du centre. Et pour qu'elle reste en place, je dois maintenant les coudre. Alors, pour faire cela, je vais tenir mes billes avec mon pouce pour pas qu'elles bougent. Et je vais monter mon aiguille du bas entre 2 billes ici. Alors, je monte à l'extérieur de la rangée. Et là, je vais redescendre à l'intérieur. Et ce que ça va faire, c'est que ça va créer un point de couture qui va entre les billes. Alors là, entre ces 2 billes ici, j'ai un point qui va les tenir en place. Et là, je dois faire la même chose jusqu'autour du cercle. Alors, je vais remonter encore entre 2 billes ici. À l'extérieur de la rangée, je vais tirer. Et là, je vais redescendre à l'intérieur de la rangée. Et ça va créer un point de couture entre les 2 billes. Maintenant, dans le style de perlage métis, ceci se fait typiquement à chaque 2e bille. Par contre, dans d'autres styles de perler, ça se fait des fois à chaque bille, chaque 3e bille. Ça dépend de quel peuple travaille le morceau ou même de quelle région le morceau vient. Alors là, ce que j'ai fait, c'est que j'ai ajouté un 3e point de couture et on peut voir que j'ai maintenant un petit cercle jaune au centre de ma fleur. Maintenant, dans mon patron, j'ai beaucoup de place. Alors, je vais faire une autre rangée. Et c'est important de noter ici que dans un cercle, on travaille de l'intérieur vers l'extérieur. Lorsque on commence avec les pétales, on va faire quelque chose un peu différent. On va aller de l'extérieur vers l'intérieur. Alors, ça dépend beaucoup de quelle forme on travaille. Ici, je vais maintenant remonter encore à l'extérieur de la rangée. N'importe quel côté, ça n'a aucune différence, mais aussi proche que possible de ma rangée numéro 2. Là, je vais tirer. Et cette fois, je vais ramasser 15 billes. Par contre, ça va peut-être ou peut-être pas être assez pour faire tout le tour. Malheureusement, le perler n'est pas une art, le perler n'est pas une science parfaite. Alors, ça va vraiment dépendre de l'artiste pour voir combien de billes on doit utiliser. Alors là, j'en ai 15. So, je vais juste les laisser tomber vers mon papier. Et là, je dois, avec mon pouce, mesurer pour voir est-ce que j'ai assez de billes pour faire tout le tour. Alors, je tiens les billes en bas avec mon pouce. Je fais une loupe, je vais autour. Moi, je dirais qu'ici, j'ai un espace J'ai un espace ici où je pourrais probablement ajouter une bille. Alors, je vais en ajouter une. Et encore, je vais redescendre dans le même trou où je suis montée. Et là, encore une fois, pour que les billes restent en place, je dois les tenir avec mon pouce et je dois coudre chaque deuxième bille vers le bas pour qu'elle reste plate contre le papier. Alors, je monte à l'extérieur de la rangée, je tire et je redescends à l'intérieur. Ensuite, je continue. Alors, je remonte à l'extérieur, je tire et je redescends vers l'intérieur. Comme j'ai mentionné, comment j'ai appris le perlage et à mesure que j'ai travaillé avec différents mentors, on m'a souvent dit que c'est super important que quand on commence à faire du perlage, qu'on pense vraiment seulement à notre travail sur lequel on fait et d'être dans le moment présent. Alors, c'est vraiment important d'être présent parce que aussitôt qu'on commence à penser à autre chose, que nos pensées commencent à courir, on va dire, c'est là où on rencontre des problèmes dans notre perlage. On perd nos aiguilles ou nos aiguilles brisent. On oublie où nous sommes rendus dans notre patron. Alors, quand on pense à cet aspect spirituel du parler ou l'aspect de méditation, comme plusieurs personnes décrivent cette pratique, c'est vraiment important. Ou ce qui ressort vraiment pour moi, c'était cet aspect d'être et de penser dans le présent. Alors là, j'ai fait tout le tour de mon cercle et si je porte attention, je peux compter pour voir combien de points j'ai fait en faisant le tour. Mais je pourrais aussi, si j'ai perdu compte, juste pousser pour voir s'il y a des billes qui remontent ou non. Sinon, là, on sait que c'est serré, c'est sécure. Et là, on peut passer à la prochaine étape. Alors, dans cette fleur à 3 pétales, la prochaine étape, ça va être de faire les bordures des pétales, pour la fleur. Alors, je vais commencer avec la pétale du haut. Et pour faire ça, je vais monter sur cette ligne ici sur mon patron, dans le coin aussi proche que possible de mon centre, où la ligne rejoint. Je vais tirer mon aiguille. Et là, je vais ramasser assez de billes pour faire tout le tour. Alors, avec cette fleur, typiquement, ça va être entre 25 et 30 billes. Mais vraiment, ça dépend de ton dessin. Alors encore, c'est pas une science parfaite. Ça prend beaucoup d'estimation. Alors là, je vais en ramasser. On va voir 25 pour voir comment loin ça nous apporte. 3. À mesure que tu les comptes, tu peux les pousser sur ton aiguille. Alors là, je suis rendue à 10. Alors là, j'en ai 25. Je vais les laisser tomber jusqu'à mon papier pour voir si ça va faire le tour. Et vraiment, c'est aussi super important de se rappeler que le dessin est strictement un patron. Parfois, quand on se donne un dessin, on devient vraiment, vraiment pris sur l'idée que notre perlage doit suivre la ligne à la ligne. Mais vraiment, c'est plutôt au sujet de où tes billes t'apportent et comment tu te sens ce jour et l'espace dans lequel tu es. Alors, si par chance, tu ne suis pas le patron à la ligne, c'est très correct. Alors, là, j'ai eu un vraiment bon exemple. J'avais un nœud dans mon fil, alors j'ai dû arrêter pour le défaire. Et ça, c'est très possiblement parce que, à mesure que je vous démontre ces étapes, je suis en train de parler et de penser, mais pas nécessairement directement sur le patron sur lequel je travaille. Alors, je suis un peu distraite peut-être de ce que je travaille. Et alors là ça, c'est où ce que je commence à rencontrer les problèmes. Maintenant, 25 billes, pour moi, ça va être assez faire le tour. Alors là, je vais commencer à les coudre en place. Alors, juste encore noter que en faisant la bordure, je suis en train de commencer de l'extérieur et je travaille vers l'intérieur cette fois. Alors là, je vais monter mon aiguille encore entre deux billes à l'extérieur de la rangée. Je vais tirer et je vais redescendre à l'intérieur de la rangée. Et ça va créer un point entre les deux billes qui va les garder en place. Et là, je continue. Alors, je vais faire tout le tour de ma pétale de cette façon. Et moi, j'utilise souvent mon pouce comme guide pour garder mes billes en place. Alors là, je vais monter à l'extérieur. Je tire. Et je vais redescendre à l'intérieur de ma rangée. Je descends et je continue comme ça pour faire tout le tour jusqu'à ce que toutes les billes soient cousues en place. Alors, je monte et je descends. Alors, comme j'ai mentionné, c'est une technique ou un mouvement très répétitif. Alors, on continue à faire la même chose. Et puis, ça peut en soi-même devenir routine et quelque chose qui peut être une bonne forme de méditation. Et là, souvent, nous apporte un esprit positif, la créativité. Alors encore, là, je rencontre un nœud. Je vais juste prendre un instant pour le faire, voilà. La créativité, c'est une bonne façon de stimuler notre cerveau et nos pensées de façon positive. Alors là, je suis presque rendue à l'autre bout. Et encore une fois, je fais à chaque deuxième bille. Alors, je monte à l'extérieur de ma rangée. Ensuite, je vais redescendre à l'intérieur. Alors voilà, j'ai une pétale. Maintenant, pour commencer à remplir, on va faire la même chose avec la même forme, mais à l'intérieur de cette première ligne. Alors, je vais vous montrer juste une autre ligne pour commencer à remplir la fleur. Ensuite, je vais vous montrer rapidement comment faire une tige, parce que encore une tige, c'est une différente forme. Alors, ça se fait faire d'une différente façon. Alors, encore pour un ovale, pour remplir, on va commencer aussi proche de cette première ligne bleue que possible, mais à l'intérieur, et aussi proche de notre ligne jaune que possible ici. Alors là, puisqu'on a fait 25 billes sur la première rangée, on peut dire que cette rangée, ça va être autour de 20, mais encore, ça va être quelque chose qu'il faudra mesurer. Alors là, j'ai 5, je les laisse tomber. Je continue à ramasser. OK, là, je suis rendue à 10. L'autre chose qui est vraiment intéressante au sujet du parler, c'est de façon historique, c'était quelque chose qui se faisait en communauté. Alors, les dames, les femmes se rassemblaient pour faire leur perlage quand c'était pas fait en secret. Et ça, c'est un aspect qui revient beaucoup aujourd'hui. Alors, les gens qui font du parler cherchent des communautés avec qui se joindre ou s'asseoir pour pratiquer cet art. Et ça, en soi-même, ça peut être vraiment bon pour notre esprit, pour notre santé mentale et physique. Alors, d'être dans l'espace avec d'autres personnes, de partager une passion pour quelque chose. Et puis, on serait vraiment surpris à combien on apprend l'un de l'autre. Quand on s'assoit en communauté ensemble, on discute de nos stratégies, de nos techniques, on se partage des idées, ça aide avec la créativité. Et ça, c'est vraiment un autre aspect super important du perlage aujourd'hui et dans le passé. Ça se fait ensemble, en groupe, et comme être social. Ça aide à rencontrer des besoins qu'on a. Alors maintenant, je fais la même chose pour coudre en place cette prochaine rangée. Je remonte entre les deux et je vais descendre à l'intérieur. Et encore moins, typiquement, j'utilise mon pouce pour garder mes billes en place. Et là encore, je fais chaque deuxième bille jusqu'à ce que je fais tout le tour. Alors là, tu vois, là, je suis rendue ici, j'ai un nœud. Et ça peut très possiblement être parce que, encore une fois, je suis pas 100% de mon attention est donnée à mon morceau ici. Ce qui est super, super important pour le produit final qu'on veut avoir. C'est aussi super important de s'assurer que lorsqu'on ramasse un projet, on est dans un esprit positif. Parce que souvent, quand on rentre avec ça ici, ou rentre dans un projet déjà frustré, fâché, ces sentiments peuvent se faire voir dans notre projet. Nos lignes vont peut-être pas être tout à fait droites. Nos cercles vont peut-être pas être assez grands ou la bonne taille, à la bonne place même. Les choses vont pas être centrées. Alors, ces émotions qu'on ressent ressortent vraiment aussi dans notre travail. Alors là, je suis presque rendue à l'autre bout. On va dire un autre ici. Et là, pour terminer cette pétale, je continuerai à faire des cercles plus petits jusqu'à ce que j'arrive au milieu. La seule autre chose que je recommanderais quand on fait une fleur, c'est pas aussi important avec 3 pétales, mais si on en avait 4 ou 5, il faut toujours faire les bordures, toutes les bordures en premier avant de remplir, juste pour s'assurer que toutes nos bordures vont être la même taille. Parce que si on fait une et on remplit, et ensuite l'autre et on remplit, par le temps qu'on se rend à la dernière, elle va rapetisser. Alors, on compte combien de billes on a fait pour la bordure. On fait chaque bordure pour solidifier la forme. Ensuite, on remplit. Maintenant, ça, c'est comment on fait un cercle, une pétale. Et là, pour les vignes, ici, les tiges, c'est vraiment juste des lignes droites. Alors, quand ça arrive aux tiges, je monte à un bout. Je tire et je mets assez de billes pour me rendre à l'autre bout. Alors ici, on va commencer, on va dire avec 5 ou 6. OK, alors là, je vais aller avec 6. Je vais laisser mes billes tomber au papier. Et je vais redescendre à l'autre bout de ma ligne. Et là, je prends le temps pour les coudre en place. Et là, les lignes droites, c'est une des choses qui prend souvent le plus de concentration et le plus d'attention aux détails parce que c'est très facile de virer nos billes pour qu'elle aille de façon un peu croche. Alors vraiment, c'est ici où il faut avoir le plus de concentration. C'est dans nos lignes droites. Puisqu'il y avait 6 billes, je vais faire 3 points de couture en montant d'un côté et redescendant de l'autre. Et ensuite, je ferai la même chose pour toutes mes tiges. Alors voilà les étapes du perlage métis. Et ça, c'est pour une fleur simple, mais la technique, comme j'ai mentionné, elle est pareille pour n'importe quelle forme ou fleur métis que tu vas voir. Alors voilà les étapes, comme j'ai mentionné, pour le perlage métis. Quelques petites choses que j'aimerais juste retoucher vraiment vite. C'est cette idée du perlage comme étant quelque chose qui est très spirituel, qui a un aspect de méditation. Vraiment, le plus important, c'est de toujours avoir de bonnes pensées quand on travaille sur un morceau, de penser à la personne pour qui le morceau va être fait, parce qu'on veut vraiment que les qualités de cette personne ressortent dans le produit final. Alors, c'est toujours un plaisir de pouvoir partager mes connaissances et j'espère que vous avez appris quelque chose aujourd'hui. Merci.
Oh, they told me that Jerry Baird's going to be at this event. And he's going to be doing Elvis. I used to listen to that guy on NCI, you know. And I was thinking, oh boy, that man's lucky I got a old man already. Holy man. He was just shaking his hips, you know, like the real Elvis. He is singing Don't Be Cruel. Meanwhile, he's just breaking hearts everywhere, that guy. No business. We're sick.
Baby, if I made you mad, there's something that I might have said. Please did you forget my past? My future looks bright ahead. I don't be cruel to a heart that's true. I don't want no other love. Baby, it's just you. I don't stop thinking of me. I don't wanna make me feel this way. Come on over here and love me. You know what I want you to say. I don't be cruel. Your heart is true. Why should we be apart? I really, really love you, baby. Now let's walk to the preacher. Let us see I do. And then you'll know you'll have me. I don't know, but I'll have you. Don't be cruel. It's true. I don't want no other. Baby, it's just you. Don't be cruel. Your heart is true. Don't be cruel. Your heart is true. Here we go. Well, I don't want no other love. Baby, it's just you.
I think now we have a Christmas song. I hope we have a Christmas song, man. We'll send this one out to the survivors on the show, and Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Thank you very much. On the Elvis Christmas special, Elvis, the Colonel, he wanted all Christmas songs. And Elvis took charge of his own career at that moment. He said, "No, sir, there's only going to be one Christmas song." And I'd like to send it out to our survivors, if I could. It goes like this. I'll have a Christmas without you. I'll be so blue just thinking about you. Decorations of red on a green Christmas tree. Oh, little girl, have your night here with me. And the windows blue, the snowflakes start falling. Windows blue, memories like one calling. You'll be doing alright with your Christmas of what? A blue, blue, blue Christmas. I'll have a blue Christmas without you. I'll be so blue just thinking about you. You'll be doing alright with your Christmas of what? Have a blue, blue, blue Christmas. Thank you very much.
I heard that Helder event is gonna get that chef. What's his name? Ray Bear. He's a Cree, I'm a Soto. That guy can cook anything, He's gonna cook with one of the Helders. Pauline Shirt. I was thinking, I cook traditional foods too, eh? I could have given you a deal. Yeah. I could make bannock on a stick. Oh, my back! See, this is traditional food. It's called bannock on a stick. Have you ever heard of that? That's what I'm gonna make. I should set a snare while I'm out here. What do you think? I could catch a rabbit. What? You know what? That bannock fell in the fire, hey? That was a offering. Look, there's still some bannock on there. That's just enough to have with a little bit of honey, a little bit of butter and jam even. Yeah. Look, come here. Look how good that is. That bannock. You see, that's a good one. Oh, it's simmering. Mmm. That's so good. I should have had a professional cooking show for sure. That's what I'm thinking. I got so many times I didn't get discovered. Holy man, that's the best bannock I ever ate. For sure. Mmm. Oh, that's so good.
Welcome to the NCTR Survivor Holiday Special. I'm Chef Ray Bear from Halifax, Nova Scotia. through way of Muscadet First Nation in Saskatchewan. This time of year, we gather friends and family, celebrating the ingredients of Turtle Island. We're going to prepare and celebrate each ingredient, creating a holiday feast that you can bring to your table. From coast to coast to coast, we have amazing Northern Arctic char. We have this prairie bison, beautiful Nova Scotia lobster, all these foraged items from sunchokes to chanterelles to beautiful Out West morels. And this bear grease that I clarified myself. Please join me as we go step by step, as we take all these traditional items and bring them together for a feast for your family. Later on, we'll be joined by Alder Pauline Shirt. Chanterelles are one of those mushrooms that are very sought after. They grow on both coasts, and foragers go into the forest and forage for them in July. We're going to serve them with our bison. Morel mushrooms are one of those mushrooms that bloom right after a fire. So our friends at Lytton Nation should go look for these next year. Once morels are picked, they're usually dried for storage. We're going to use that to our advantage. We're going to steep them and let them hydrate. We'll use some of that juice for our sauce to serve with our bison. This is caribou moss. It grows in the forest, usually on other types of moss. We're going to fry it up and serve it as a chip on top of our lobster. So purple seaweed, some people call this dolts. We're going to do 2 different preparations. We're going to fry it up and steep it and serve it as a garnish for the plate. Sunchoke is one of those gems that you have to go digging for, found underneath the sunflower plant. We're going to roast it in the oven and treat it like a potato. So the sunchokes, because they came out of the ground, we have to make sure that there's no dirt on them. So give them a good wash. You can kind of pick any of the little eyes on the end, like so. And like I said, they're kind of like a potato. So a little chef's tip. If you harvest your sunchokes at the end of fall, before winter hits, the skins will be nice and tender. And you can cook them without peeling them. And actually the skins have a lot of flavor, so I like to keep them on. Our fat of choice, our bear fat. We have our oven preheated at 350 degrees. Just gonna salt and pepper it and treat it just like a potato. Give it a nice toss. Make sure it's fully coated. And into the oven, about 8 to 10 minutes. I decided to use bison on the plate, as a lot of the First Nations are reintroducing it to their areas in the plains. I personally love it. We're gonna sear it in some of the bear fat, serve it with the mushrooms. But first, we're gonna salt cure it. Let it sit in the fridge for a couple hours before we bring it to the heat. Our bison's all ready to go. It's been sitting in the fridge with the salt on it for a couple hours. The seasoning's really gotten in the middle of that steak. Our pan is nice and hot. You can put your hand on it for about 5 seconds and then move it away. It should be nice and toasty. We're gonna introduce some of the bear fat. Oh yeah. Cooking with all senses here. Oh yeah. Now with the steak, don't be afraid to flip it every 2 minutes. The myth of flipping it too much is wrong. You really want to create that crust on there. Get that seasoning right in there. We're going to hit the top of it just with some fresh pepper and let that sear. Like this, it's going to take a little while. Some people want it a little bit more well done. I know the elders like to eat it that way, but I'm really looking for like a medium rare doneness. So probably 8 to 10 minutes for this. Right. Go ahead and, oh yeah, look at that. We're creating a nice crust there. Now that we flipped it, we're gonna add some aromatics. Garlic. Some juniper. Put that right on top so that flavor gets into that steak. Use some of the modern stuff like thyme or rosemary We're going pine needles here. And we're just gonna bake that steak, let that cook, let all those juices kind of keep going over that steak, get some real good flavor in there. Make sure you get that bear fat right on top of those needles. Let those oils come out of the needles. Let's give it another flip. Just pull everything off the side. Don't be afraid. And when this steak is done, and you got it to the doneness that you are seeking, I would say probably about 130 degrees. You're gonna take it and let it rest. Let it rest on the side for, say 5-6 minutes. Let those juices come back into the steak. The bear fat is ideal for doing this. Has a pretty good smoke point, and it's just making such a beautiful crust on the steak. Okay, we have our desired doneness for the steak. I'm gonna take it out of the pan carefully. Let's set it off to the side and let it rest here. Don't throw out this fat though. This is where our chanterelles and our morels come into play. And it's getting all those little crispy bits from the steak, all the fondants, that's what we call it in the chef school, all the fondants from the steak, and it's all going into those mushrooms. Those mushrooms are soaking up all that bear fat. It's all flavor right there. As you can see, a lot of the bear fat is gone. Our mushrooms are getting nice and tender. And we're gonna add the liquid now from the morels, the steeping liquid that we rehydrated the morels in. Beautiful Nova Scotia lobster. Now, if you're from the East Coast, you're not worried. But if you're from out west, you might be a little intimidated. Just remember, grab it behind the claws here so it can't get you. We're gonna put it in boiling water for 3 minutes. Then we're gonna take it out of its shell and finish it in the bear fat. Okay everyone, this is the big moment. The lobster is going in the pot. Now usually you cook a lobster 8 to 10 minutes per pound, but we're just blanching the lobster, so it's just gonna be in there for 3 minutes. We have ocean salt water here. We're gonna add our lobster, put it in head first, so it doesn't feel any pain. We're thankful for you, buddy, but you're going in. So after 3 minutes, we've got the good color on there, nice and red. We're gonna throw it in our ice water and we're gonna rest the cooking. We'll leave it in there until it cools down. All right, now we got our lobster back. It's nice and cool, but it's getting ready to go back into the oven. Just gently rip off the tail and confidently run your knife through. We're not gonna take it out of the shell yet because we still want some of that flavor from the shell. So just in the pan, put our claws in as well. I always give them a little crack. The rest of our bear fat. Seaweed in next to it. A little bit of our caribou moths. That's gonna cook in the bear fat as well at the same time. And into the oven. This beautiful Arctic char from up north. We're not gonna mess around with it too much. We're just gonna season it, some nice sea salt, let it cure for about 3 hours, and we're gonna slice it nice and thin and let it garnish the plate. We got our Arctic char. It's nice and cured, and we're just gonna slice it nice and thin, and we'll use it for garnish for our plate. Just take your time, get nice slices. Look at the color of this char. And it's okay to leave the salt right on it, so that's gonna be really nice seasoning for our plate. Okay, everybody's favorite. We're gonna make bannock, or depending on what your community calls it, could be fry bread, flat bread, Luskinigan, or we're gonna call it bannock today. And everybody's got their own recipe as well. We're gonna keep it pretty simple, pretty traditional. We have 2 cups of flour, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, a little pinch of salt, maybe 2, So mix that up, make a little well in the middle of the bowl. And 1 cup of water. And you can use 1 cup or 1 1/4 cups depending on what you need. I like mine a little drier. Mix that all in, just make a dough. And I always reserve a little bit of flour off to the side just in case I might need a little bit more. Now you don't want to overwork this because it will get tough. You want to keep it nice and soft, nice and light. Yeah, just like that. Now let's go over to the stove. So we have our bear grease heated up in a cast iron pan. Put our bannock in the top. We'll start it here, and then we're going to finish it in the oven. I have the oven heated, 350 degree. Should take about 10 minutes. Okay, our bannock is ready. Let's get it out of the oven here. Oh yeah, look at that. Beautiful. So no matter what you call that, fry bread or flat bread or bannock or skin again, I think everybody would be happy with that. All right, we're ready to plate. So I'm gonna pull the lobster out of the oven. Steak has been resting. Our sunchokes and our mushrooms are ready to go. Our sauce is here, and our garnish of Arctic char is sitting there curing. Now, we have the lobster in there for about 7 minutes. And let's take a look. Oh yeah, look at that doneness. Perfect. Beautiful opaque lobster. Look at that bison. Wow, it's gorgeous. As you can see, it's still nice and warm, but well rested. A lot of blood on the board. We're gonna season it, but not too much seasoning because we've been seasoning it all the way. Just a little fresh salt on there. And our lobster. We'll just pull this out here. Oh yeah, that. Crack this. Pull the shell out. Ooh, look at that. We'll garnish with our sunchokes, our chanterelles, and our morels. Now, from up north, our Arctic char. And that Arctic char has salt cure on it, so that's gonna add some really nice seasoning to that steak and to that lobster. A little bit of the seaweed. And from our pan with the lobster, we have our caribou moths, some of the purple seaweed, the fried seaweed, our sauce from the bison and the mushrooms. Yeah. That is scented with the juniper. Last but not least, we have a little bit of ash made from the pine that we used earlier, the pine needles. And we'll just season the whole plate with a little bit of that. And this is my interpretation of our indigenous cooking from coast to coast to coast. I'm gonna sit down with our elder, Pauline Shirt, and we're gonna eat it together. Happy holidays. Hi, Pauline, thanks for joining me. It's the first time I've done online dating like this.
I've been on a date for a long time.
There you go, both of us. Okay, so Pauline, this is my interpretation of indigenous cooking from coast to coast to coast. So the idea was I was gonna put together a plate that kind of represented all of our First Nations on Turtle Island.
Okay.
What we have here, we have bison that we did in the cast iron pan with some...
Pasqualmustus, we say. Yeah.
For me?
Pasqualmustus.
Yes, I'll take your word for that. And then we have lobster that we did in bear, a little bit of bear fat. We have mushrooms that we foraged and cooked in the bear fat as well. And to top it all off, we have this cured Arctic char to add some seasoning to the dish.
Ooh, wow.
I'm gonna bust it. I'm gonna have some of this lobster. Do you enjoy lobster, Pauline?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I love lobster. Yes.
Toast.
All right. Yes. Oh, you just must be so you're so used to that. Yeah, that's a really delicious food that our people really have fought for and tried to keep that.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, I admire our people. I
That's
admire
right.
you. Yeah,
It's
for
our
bringing
right to
that
have,
into the
it's our right to pick
situation. Yeah.
lobster. You're exactly right, Pauline.
And then what did you cook the Arctic char in? I'm sorry, I made a mistake. The lobster.
Oh, the lobster. The lobster is actually cooked slowly in the bear fat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we harvested a bear and got the bear fat and clarified it, and then we cooked everything in it.
I used to hear our people, and the way I was brought up traditionally on a place called Saddle Lake, Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the Cree Nation.
Yeah.
And we all, we were brought up traditionally. So, we did a lot of our cooking outside. Bear fat was a staple. It was, what we do with bear fat is that it's the medicine, eh? It's the medicine. Yeah. And we put it into our sweat lodge, into a container. And what we put in there is sage. We mix it with sage, yes. And it's the best medicine for when you have arthritis or any kind of injury to your foot or anywhere.
And it's good for your skin and hair as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the lobster has given up its life, and we thank that, and that to give us that, and the same thing with the bear. We always say that Makwa, is just one of the most revered animals. And we always say, when we introduce ourselves, and that's why I will introduce myself, okay, in the Cree.
Okay. All right.
And I'll say, the way magan duk, okay. Listen to that word. The way magan duk means relatives, and those are the relatives from what you're doing is the birds, the animals, insects, and all of that. Those are all the animals in the world. Look at the fish, has given up its life. So that's what we're saying, hello, my relatives, and hello, my relatives is it's the grease, the bear, and all that stuff, and lobster, and look at that. You just come from practically all of the directions, okay, and the bear.
Right,
the bear, all over.
Try to cover it all.
You covered it all. That's beautiful. I'm proud of you. Thank you. And you just keep going.
Well, Pauline, thanks for joining me. And let me just say happy holidays.
Yes. Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I was been looking forward to this. Yeah.
Thank you, Chef Ray Bear, for teaching me a thing or two around the kitchen. I needed that. And I look forward to trying to make a few of your yummy recipes for my family too. Speaking of learning new things, I recently upgraded my phone and I noticed I'm not the only one who had done the same. I got a text from Skinny Cuckoo. She always ends her text with LOL, LOL. I texted her back and said, you don't need two LOLs. She said in a text back, I'm learning this new language, hey, LOL. My daughter kept sending me that too, and I changed it to LOL, LOL for every text. You know what that means? I text her back, what does LOL, LOL mean? Lots of love from a little old lady. I just laughed. Laughter is good medicine. And speaking of good medicine, joining us today is Sean Lazar, who's going to do a session on techniques to help cope with triggers and how to manage stress. Please welcome Sean Lazar.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share, even in this virtual environment. Still feels good to share, and when I say that notion of sharing, to share a story, for me in my life is actually, it feels so good because it's healing in a different way. There's reciprocal energy going back and forth, and I've written a lot of pieces, and I have a lot I've been thinking about every single day. For the past 3 weeks, I volunteer teaching at a high school, and I haven't taught at a high school for a long time, but I'm volunteering in a Cree class with the end goal of learning 100 words by the end of December. So I'm kind of thinking about all that positive energy I'm receiving from high school kids that are so gently teaching me here in Edmonton. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta. I was telling them about this opportunity to speak, and they wanted to send their love and their good energy and spirits to you also out there listening. My name is Sean Lassard. I'm from Montreal Lake Cree Nation on Treaty 6 territory. That's in north central Saskatchewan. My current job is I'm a volunteer Cree teacher that can't quite speak Cree, but I'll get there. I'm a youth worker. I design education systems right across Turtle Island with communities. And the day-to-day job is I'm a university professor at the University of Alberta and the director of research, teacher, and education at the University of Alberta. I wrote a piece for you, and I'm happy to share. And it's a piece that I wrote during COVID. I've been so busy writing in my life a lot of academic pieces and doing research, but I was challenged to write for children. So I wrote a piece called Bubbling Up, and I want to share it with you to open up this space. Feels good to read to elders today, and I hope you get what I'm trying to share here. Bubbling up. Bubbling up like a soda pop fizzing inside of me is how I feel. This feeling's in my stomach always. You see, I want to tell the stories my dad has shared with me and the stories his mother and grandmother share with him about his home and community. He must really like these stories because he's always talking about them in some way. I want to put my hand up, reach real high, and tell my teacher what I know. I want to tell the world how much I know about all these things you share with me, but I can't, even when it's bubbling up inside of me. I go silent. I stay silent always. You see, my daddy's Woodland Cree, who tells me many stories of his home and the people in his community. I guess as his daughter, this makes me Woodland Cree also. I am just learning, still learning, always learning. I go back home to his community with him sometimes, and let me tell you, it's a long ways from the city. We have to travel all day. No cell phones here, he says. I won't tell Dad, it might disappoint him to know that the drive is so long. When we go back home to the community, we fish together. We walk down the forest trails, and he always wants to hold hands. It's different here in the community. There are so many trees and water in this forest place. He tells me how happy he is when I come with him. I believe when he says that. I'm not going to tell him that I don't really love fishing, but I guess I'll give it a try. It's usually just me and my big sister that travel back home with him. I wonder about that. I can see that he's proud when he's with us in his community. He literally and annoyingly introduces us to everyone. First the elders, and then the chief, then the vice chief and his cousins and aunties and his family. There's so many people to meet in this place. Everyone's laughing all the time, it seems. It's exhausting here. It bubbles up inside of me, some of those stories he shares with me. Little bubbles inside me start floating from the bottom to the top of my stomach, reaching out in all directions. I think when I imagine them, they're all kinds of colors, mostly bright yellow is my favorite. There are different shapes and sizes, small to large and large to small. They have this way of gently lifting me up inside. Dad says, always be proud of your Woodland Cree roots. The stories are deep inside you. Maybe these stories he speaks of are the bubbles that I'm feeling inside me, wanting me to float, wanting me to take flight in some ways. I don't quite know what it means when he says that to me. I hope someday he solves this riddle for me, but that's my dad always speaking like that. I'm used to it by now. I'm used to him by now in his ways of never ever giving me the answers I'm looking for. I want to tell my teacher. I want to tell my friends. I want to tell all the stories he shares with me, even the stories of fishing, I guess would be okay at this point. At his home, I notice he has beautiful art, buffaloes in nature, bears and colorful circular images all over the walls. My dad writes stories about his home and his community in his journals. He doesn't know this, but I sometimes go through his journals and read them all by myself. I read about the stories of him as a young boy and us, my little brothers and sisters. Dad takes me to so many places to share about his culture, about our woodland roots, he says. He always says, someday you'll understand more. I wish he would just hurry up and tell me. Bubbling up, it's like bubbles filling inside me. I get so excited to try and share some of the stories, but to tell you the truth, I don't think that people will believe me. Some might even laugh, even though I have been to all these places with my dad. You see, I have light brown skin. I have the wildest curly hair. At least that's what my dad calls it. He says it's my superpower. I have brown eyes like him, but they're a different sort of brown mixed with green. So that makes it different. That makes us different. My eyes are round, his are differently shaped. He says my middle name, S-A-G-E, Sage, comes from a place of stories. It's funny because I don't know what that means when he says that, but let me guess, someday I'll understand. I sit at my desk and squirm, hoping that no one asks me when we talk about these ideas at school today. I hope no one notices how uncomfortable I am and that my face is starting to turn a little red, even when it's not visible. The bubbles rise up faster, quicker during these times. And then when I go silent and say nothing like I do every time, I can feel the fizz inside of me disappearing. It's at this point that the bubbles begin to no longer float. They slowly lose their shape and become flat and float back slowly down to the pit of my stomach. I'm wondering sometimes if this is where they really belong. At this point, I can start to quietly hear his voice inside of me, repeating regularly to be proud of your woodland roots. At this point, I can feel him holding my hand walking down the woodland trails of our community. At this point, I can remember the sounds of laughter in a different language as he made me meet all those people. I guess they are my people also. I'm just beginning to understand this now. I can see it and remember when I think about the fish, the stories in his journals, and all the places he's trying to show me. Through his art and stories and in the possible many meanings of my middle name, S-A-G-E, Sage. It's bubbling up once again like a soda pop fizzing inside of me. It's how I feel. I want this feeling to be in my stomach always. Tineke, thank you, Dad. Thank you for letting me share that piece. I sat at the kitchen table and I wrote that one afternoon when I was thinking about the challenge of writing in a different way and honoring some of the stories that were bubbling up inside of me, the stories that I was thinking about, especially during these difficult times during COVID when so many people are isolated. I wanted to try something different. I wanted to see if I could do it, if I could write in a different way. And I wrote that story in honor of my middle daughter, thinking about identity. Not only was I thinking about identity, I was thinking about the struggles, what I call the good, the bad, and the otherwise, the pieces that we have to return to at times to find ourselves when we lose ourselves along the way. I think about that with the great deal of work I do with youth and communities all across Canada. I think about that when I think of the young people who I've worked with who struggle so much in terms of identity, struggle with wellness, struggle in so many different ways. But there's these pieces within them that are so strong, that are bubbling up always. And as a teacher, as an educator, I try to look to those spaces to help negotiate the difficult times. I was wondering if you could see some of the illustrations, the yellows, the radical colors, the different shapes and sizes. You see, they're going to make this into a comic book. There's going to be an audio piece where a young person reads that story, so it gets shared in different classrooms across Canada. I'm proud of the piece. It's got some rough edges, but I guess that's kind of like me. I'm a work in progress in these different ways. When I wrote this story, I was thinking about the many young people and the families, in particular, the older ones like yourself, perhaps, who are taking care of so many of those young ones in your homes in such good ways, in such loving ways. I'm thinking about how many older ones, elders, were scared to send their kids to school, their grandkids to go to school during this COVID time. I was saying it's so difficult because so many places want us to get back to normal, to all of a sudden turn the lights on and COVID's over. And we know it's not. There's different challenges with that. In particular, challenges around wellness, mental health and our physical health during these times. I'm thinking about children at this time when I share these stories with teachers and principals. When I share with them that we have to celebrate children when they come to our places, to our spaces within school. We have to celebrate even the 1s out of 5. And what I mean about that is that I mean the child that comes to school 1 day out of 5, that 1 day out of 5 might have been the most difficult negotiation for the entire family. And yet what we often do in schools and in education is we want to catch them up. We want to get up. We need to keep up. We need to hustle up. We need to get it all back up, in terms of, getting all the work done that they supposedly have missed. And I challenge a lot of education systems. And in particular with this piece, I told them the most important thing right now is to be gentle. to lead with kindness. My friend calls it a pedagogy of the heart, teaching of the heart. And so when those students who only come in particular, maybe 1 or 2 out of 5 days, I mean, perhaps trying to catch it all up. Really what I said is we should be sitting down with a cup of tea. We should be slowing down. We should quiet down. We should settle down. We should calm down. We could turn the lights down even, I say. And what we really need to do is have gentle conversations and honoring the fact that they had made the most difficult journey in some ways is to come to school, to come to your classroom, to come to your space to learn. And even though it's 1 out of 5 days or maybe 2 out of 5 days, is to celebrate and ask about all the other things that matter and count, the things that are most important in life. I said, and then once you get there through the heart, the head knowledge will come later. But we have to settle the young people as they come to our spaces and think about it in different ways. To slow down, to quiet down, to shift down, to calm down. I said to a lot of educators in the past 2 years that we've been forever changed during this time and that we're experiencing something new. And when we experience something new, you know, it creates this unknown. It creates the unknown, which can create fear, and fear so closely tied to our difficult cousin, anger. And I talked to teachers and staff members and principals and superintendents, and I asked them and challenged them about the importance of being kind to each other and kind to the children that come to classes and enter their spaces all the time. I said, what we have is an opportunity, perhaps, to get to the other side, to examine what matters, what counts. And with that, I said, what we need to do moving forward is to return to some of our early stories, you know, when we're trying to understand children and their families. We have to reimagine ways forward, you know, in terms of relationship. I tell them to use their RE words, all the beautiful RE words like reconcile, relationship, research. I said, we have to research ourselves during the difficult times to find out the pieces that sustain us, our roots, the good stories that are within us that bubble up, that maybe have been dormant for a long time. But there are stories, the stories that are nested deep within us. And I think it's the returning to these stories, the stories that are imbued with language and culture and beautiful stories, stories of geography, stories of place, you know, stories of familial energy. These are the stories that matter and count in our schools. These are the stories that matter and count within us. And that idea of intergenerational knowledge as it's passed down from place to place and from person to person as the grandchildren return to school. I said, the most important thing for me at this time, when I'm working in schools, is to be relentless in rediscovering the relationship with children. See, I wrote that story, Bubbling Up, as a way to like return to the things that matter within us, to really re-examine the skills, all the stories that have been planted in us well along the way, and the stories that we sometimes forget about ourselves. And I said, by returning to these stories, that does help us get to the other side. That does help us sustain relationships. And in that, it helps us sustain the stories within our youth. So that's what I'm thinking about. And I was hoping that you could imagine with me some of the radical colors as they make that a comic book. And as we think about students in schools and the stories of children in school, I turn to the screen right now and I look back fondly on this first day of school when I talk to folks and say, like, you know, Sean, what are the commonplaces? And here I am walking the little girl that you heard about in the Bubbling Up story, walking her to school on her first day of kindergarten. Her name's Sedona. She's my daughter. She's Woodland Cree, just like me. There I am wearing my Woodland Cree education jacket so proudly. And I say the thing that I think that we'd all want for our kids, for our grandchildren, for our children, for our nephews and nieces and cousins, is that when we walk them into school down that long path, as you could see, is that we'd all want the same piece for them, the same type of pieces. We'd want them to be loved. We'd want them to be nurtured. We'd want them to be taken care of. We'd want them to be able to put their hand up. Most importantly, we want them to feel that they could walk 10 feet tall, regardless of their culture, regardless of their language. We want them to have a space to be nurtured where their identity could be full. I mean, and regardless of, where we're from, our geography or our cultural roots or our sexual orientation or any of these other pieces, is that we'd want the same for our children and our grandchildren. That's what I'm thinking about today. I like sitting with that comment just for a little while. It helps me reflect and remember about what matters and counts in my own life as an educator. I'm thinking about the stories of my home in Montreal Lake Cree Nation, the stories that I've come to know over time, the stories that I don't know, and the stories that I'm still learning. I wrote the uncomfortable, the uncharted, and the unknown, which are difficult negotiations. I wrote, that's why we have to pay attention to the stories that are bubbling up inside us. The bubbling up are ways forward. It's the roots. It's the things that we could turn to, like the cooking, the families, the language, the protocols, the beading, the images of trapping and hunting, the images of fishing alongside our family members, the images of sitting alongside cooking. Those are good stories, stories mostly filled with laughter. I'm certain we've all been there before. I think about some of these pieces as I examine a little bit of my own stories, the stories that I'm learning to live by, the stories that are sustaining me in the present, the stories that take me back to a volunteer opportunity working at a big, gigantic high school in Edmonton, 3,000 students. And I get to spend every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 9 o'clock to 10:15 in a Cree language class, a class where I'm trying to set a goal to learn 100 words. And I'm trying my hardest. I'm labeling my doors. I'm labeling windows, and I'm labeling food in my fridge. It's hard to even eat because I'm invested in trying to learn alongside children, grade 10s, 11s, and 12s. You see, this teacher was struggling during COVID and suddenly quit. And the principal phoned me and I said, we can't not quit. You can't start a class, a Cree language and culture class, and get kids' hopes up and then all of a sudden pull the rug from underneath them, to quit, to leave them in limbo. I said, that's unacceptable, and that does more damage and harm. I said, we will find a way. I said, I'll volunteer my time to come and learn alongside the kids. And then through that volunteering, we'll open up a space for the families to be able to come to school in a good way. Because if we put all our brains together and all our hearts together with all the children that are around there and with our relationships, I said, we will get there. We will get to the other side. We'll be at 150 words by the end of December. And so we try. I think about the stories that are nested deep within me. I put youth working, the returning to story. And I think about the early moments of my own journey. I didn't know what I wanted to do, like many of the young people that I work with right now in that class. It brings me great joy to not only tease them every day, but to laugh alongside them and to bring them tea, to cook for them, and just to spend time with them, to hear their stories, to hear the stories about where they're situated, where they're from, and what they're dreaming of. I love those stories. They fill me up. It bubbles up inside of me when I get to hear some of these amazing stories of young people trying to do something different. Coincidentally, there's 6 students in a class of 29 that are non-Indigenous. They're not First Nation. They're not Métis. They're actually from other places and other communities, but they have an honest-hearted drive to learn more about Cree language and culture in this particular story. And I'm so proud of them to take that chance, to take that risk with us and to learn alongside us. And the kids are so amazing because they take care of their new friends. I wrote 1,234.62. 1,234.62. 1,234.62 is the amount of money that I made each month as a youth worker. And I've kept every single pay stub from that early job. My first job working with children in a different type of space. I went to school as a 17-year-old because my mom said it's time to pick a college. That is my adopted mom, my non-Indigenous mom, sat down one night and said, you're going to pick a college. And you're going to pick a college by 9 o'clock this evening. And it was 6 o'clock that night. But one of the rules is you're going to pick the college. It has to be 100 kilometers away from here, Sean. And I said, well, why would I go to school 100 kilometers away when there's one just in the town? And she said, you know what? As your guidance counselor, I don't think you understand me, is that it's time for you to go somewhere else different and to try to get some new adventures, but it's not going to be here in this town, in this place with your old friends. You're going to push yourselves in a different place. And so she handed me all these college guidebooks, and I had to try to figure out something that would be interesting to me, something that I could do. That's a lot of pressure for a 17-year-old person. But you know what? I found something. I found in this one book at Lakeland College, this program called Rehabilitation Services / Youth Worker. It sounded kind of interesting. I thought maybe I could do it because I had an interest in kids, but I didn't know anything about working with them. And one of the challenges in this job was to go spend time with older adults who had disabilities, sometimes physical, sometimes intellectual disabilities. And I had to write an essay after spending time in a volunteer capacity. And so I did it. First one Saturday, I went to a sheltered workshop and spent the entire afternoon scared, fearful of the unknown, of the uncharted. I sat and observed and watched. And I became so intrigued and trying to help out, but I was frozen with fear because I didn't know anything, not only about myself, but about helping others. So I volunteered another Saturday, and then I volunteered another Saturday, and then I volunteered another Saturday and another Saturday. And finally, I was able to write an essay. I got accepted into Lakeland College later on that school year to this program, a 2-year college diploma, where I learned to become a youth worker, somebody who worked with youth in a different way in the community. And when I write this slide, I talk about the stories that we return to, the bubbling up that we always have to return to figure out what's going to sustain our stories going forward. I think about the young people in these early experiences that shaped me and reminded me about who I am and who I'm becoming. At this point, I was 17 years old. And at this point in my life, I was also wondering and so looking forward to trying to understand some of the other stories that were nested deep inside me, the stories that bubble up inside me all the time. You see, I was a kid at the beginning of my early years, would spend time in Montreal Lake Cree Nation, then I'd get fostered to a different home, and then back to Montreal Lake Cree Nation, then fostered to a different home, and back and forth and back and forth. And then finally, I ended up on a farm in rural Saskatchewan where I was eventually adopted by a non-Indigenous family. They adopted me and let me stay a while. And it was in this place where, I had 3 square meals a day. I had to learn a lot in a different way, as all my brothers and sisters were blonde. And then there was me, this very different kid in this different place. At 17 years old, I remember going to my dad and having a conversation with him and asking him, so from the heart, man, could you teach me, Dad? Can you show me the papers? Because I want to go home. I want to know what home is. I want to know where home is. And he reluctantly handed me the papers, where I read a lot of stories about my early beginnings, where I read a lot of stories that didn't feel so good and that were hard to take. But I found out I was from Montreal Lake Cree Nation. At this point, I made the long drive home by borrowing my dad's truck. I made my way back to Montreal Lake Cree Nation, where I met for the very first time a man by the name of Misty Glenn Helkett. Misty Glenn met me at the band office. And I can't imagine how my story could have been so different as I went at 17 years old to a place where I knew nothing about, and a place I didn't feel I belonged. But I was met by a man who's a storyteller in the community. And he said, Sean, your mom's been looking for you for a long time and waiting for you to come home. Sean, your sister and brothers are waiting for you to come home. Sean, your grandfather's still alive. He's waiting to meet you. He's been waiting for you to come home. Welcome back home, Sean, to Montreal Lake Cree Nation. So at 17 years old, I began to go home, to return home, to research myself. My identity was bubbling up inside me, fizzing like a soda pop, like I wrote about. And I've been going home ever since then. From 17, I'm 45 years old now. And I go home all the time. And my number one thing when I go home is to spend time with our older people in the community, our elders. I always bring them hoodies and shoes and swag and gifts because I want to see them just proud of the work that we're trying to do with kids. These are the things I'm thinking about when I write these stories. When I return to the stories that sustain me, the stories that keep me going and that keep me passionate in this work that I'm doing with Indigenous youth. I always say when we're working in these school places, and I'm spending my time back in a gigantic high school, is that in schools, just like in other institutions, hospitals and other places, is that we need more rounded spaces. And quite literally, I mean, we need to find spaces in these institutions, in these big places where we can connect and gather, where people could come from the outside, where we can make it more welcoming, more loving, where a pedagogy of the heart exists. Because that's why our kids are struggling in schools, because there are no safe spaces to actually share some of those stories of identity, some of the stories that are bubbling up deep inside of them. And that's when kids go silent. That's when they stay silent always. And that's when they begin to leave school. That's the work that I do in my life. Not only that, I say it's not only about these spaces, it's about these other spaces where we physically have to get outside. We have to find the roundness, the roots in these spaces that are so connected to all our stories. I'm reminded so often as I ask about the geography of each kid's story. I ask them about their home place, their home, I say. And it's through those stories that it gives us a portal and relationship to share stories, good, bad, and otherwise, about family, about culture, about language, about the air that we could breathe in these beautiful places and the places that we long for at home. I do also recognize that similar to myself is that many young people have been disconnected from those stories, and that my job as an educator is to try to make the connections back. This is in downtown Toronto. I recognize how some of the stories are filled with urban stories, city stories, fast-paced stories. And my job as an educator is to slow it down, to create spaces where older people can come to the class, where we can fill it up with language in a different way, where we can begin to imagine who we are and who we're becoming, where kids can learn to walk 10 feet tall, I say. 1,234.62. 1,234.62. The pay stub each month that I got in my early job as a youth worker. In that place, in that space, I met this most awesome person, a non-Indigenous woman by the name of Laurel. She gave me my first job working with youth. And by the second year, the end of the second year, she said, "Sean, you can no longer work here." And I said, "I want to work here for the rest of my life. I love this job. This is the best job ever." She says, "You can't. You need to go somewhere else. You need to be someone else. You need to go to university and become a teacher." And I said, "No one like me goes to school to go to university. No one in my family back home in Montreal Lake and no one on the farm in my other family has ever gone to university." And she said, "Sean, I'm going to take you to the university. I'm going to have you not talk that way about yourself again. We're going to go to every part of the university and we're going to learn about those spaces. And we're going to go have tea in these different places. We're going to eat in different restaurants. We're going to listen to different music. You're going to sit in classes. You're going to go to the library. You're going to be in all these places, Sean. And we're going to learn to walk 10 feet tall." 1,234.62. I'm thankful for Laurel, who passed away during COVID, but she was my first teacher, someone who believed a different story of me, and she was right. I entered the Indian teacher education program to become a teacher later on that year. I learned that I love books. I learned that I love to read. I learned that I could be walked 10 feet tall, and I knew that university so well that I became comfortable. My job in the present is to create as many experiences for young people so they could see themselves different, to hold their hand in a different way, to walk through the forest in a different way together, to try to help them see things that they can't quite see yet within themselves. Those things that are bubbling up deep inside them, because I know they could do it. I put this slide because sometimes our stories are somewhere in between. A little bit of urban, a little bit of the forest, a little bit of our roots, a little bit of all kinds of different places. These places that are bubbling up inside. I talk about the importance of going home to our communities, going home to our stories, and being able to say where we're from so proudly. And if we don't know where we're from, to try to find our way back home, both metaphorically and physically. That we need places like this, places that fill us up. This is the old barn on my farm, but my dad was a guy that filled that barn full of soccer equipment, basketballs, hockey. And he said to just keep on shooting, to have fun, to have safe places, to understand who I am becoming as a person. I think the same thing with kids. Lessard Road, that's the name of the farmland, but it had a name differently well before colonization. But what I was trying to say is that the story of our names matters and counts. In the work that I do, I always try to make connections to children's names so we can walk 10 feet tall, so we can lift our head up and say, I'm so proud of the stories of my name and the intergenerational knowledge that's connected to it. You see, I'm a kingfisher and a settee in my other community in Sturgeon Lake and Montreal Lake. My name has meaning. My name has beautiful meaning. I come from a place of elders and chiefs and leaders and educators and politicians and teachers. And I just love the fact when I explore the meaning of my name, that I too can walk 10 feet tall, and that I know that my story has a name. There's a geography in all our stories, my friend writes. That's the shores of Montreal Lake Cree Nation. So much I do in education, I want to tie back to the geography, to the land, to the place. And now in my next goal in my life, I spent 17 years studying at the university. I'm the first person with a doctorate in Montreal Lake Cree Nation. But the next goal in my life is to learn my language. And I'm going to work so hard to achieve that task by going back home always. That's the Rapids, the place of stories, the place of gathering where my people go each year to watch the fish run, the walleye run. That's a place where I take my daughters. It's the places where the water literally bubbles up, where the stories are bubbling up deep inside me. I think that we all have stories like that as we let our imaginations go backwards to early stories, to early beginnings. And then we get a chance in these school spaces to try to do something different, where you create spaces to truly listen to children, to your grandchildren, where they come together and they talk about leading spirits, an Indigenous youth group, wanting to learn about language and culture. And my job in these big school spaces is to try to make it happen, to carve out some space so they can feel 10 feet tall when they walk the hallways, so they can invite their grandmothers and grandfathers into the school every single day if they wanted to. And sometimes we meet in different places with little ones, trying to create a space, together, to learn together, to move together. This is what I do, the kind of work that I do around physical wellness and mental health with children always. Right now in Regina, Saskatchewan, I have an after-school program that runs 5 days a week and employs 26 First Nation youth, all First Nation youth that have been in foster care, like myself. We're funded by Nike N7, and we run an after-school program and teach little ones how to play in good ways. It is beautiful. It's in its 10th year. We're called Growing Young Movers. And then sometimes we don't need a lot of money to do something different. Sometimes all we got to do is just get outside and play. This is in Fort Chipewyan in Mikisew, where I spend time with children all the time, where I go outside into the forest and we try to figure out games and a way to work with each other, a way to imagine together, a way forward in relationship. I learned so much by traveling to these different places and bubbling up. I'm thinking of you, my friends, and all the good stories that you impart in your kids and your grandchildren. I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak with you to share a little bit with you about some of the things I'm passionate about. You start with a story and you end with a story, and I'll end it this way. At this point, I could start to quietly hear his voice inside of me repeating regularly to be proud of your woodland roots. At this point, I could feel him holding my hand walking down the woodland trails of our community. At this point, I can remember the sounds of laughter in a different language as he made me meet all those people. I guess they are my people also. I'm just beginning to understand this now. I could see it and remember it when I think about the fish, the stories in his journals, and all the places he's trying to show me through his art and stories and the possible many meanings of my middle name, Sage, S-A-G-E. It's bubbling up once again like a soda pop fizzing inside of me. It is how I feel. I want this feeling to be in my stomach always. Tineke, thank you for letting me share today.
Il n'y a rien de tel que le pouvoir de la musique pour puiser dans les profondeurs de l'émotion humaine. La musique a le don d'égayer les esprits, et c'est particulièrement vrai pour les classiques de Noël. La musique nous touche encore plus profondément lorsque nous l'entendons interprétée en direct. Et j'ai le grand plaisir d'accueillir notre prochaine invitée, la chanteuse Pauline Baptiste, qui vient de produire son album A Cree Christmas. Elle se joint à nous pour partager ses dons musicaux avec le chef d'orchestre Maria Fuller et l'orchestre symphonique de Saskatoon.
let loving hearts enthrone here. Raise, raise the song on high. The virgin sings her lullaby. Joy, joy, for Christ is born. The babe, the Son of Mary. The babe, the Son of Mary.
Somebody said they're gonna have those Hive and Flet Memorial jiggers. Holy. I saw them, you know. Those are professional Red River jiggers, not just any kind of jigging, though. Professional Red River jiggers. I was thinking, I bet you if they saw me jig, they would add me to the team, you know. Yeah, I'll be part of the group. I'm pretty good, you know. I could jig too. I thought I could do that. I'll never make the cut now. Oh, I wanted to be a professional jigger.
Hello everybody, welcome to today's performance. Today we bring to you a high energy performance from the Ivan Flett Memorial Dancers. They are a trio group that perform right out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Our mission and purpose is to bring hope, motivation, and inspiration to people everywhere, young and old, near and far. We hope to share and spread our culture through the Red River Jig. So in doing so, we get to bring joy to everyone, everywhere. So here they are, the Ivan Flett Memorial Dancers.
Elders are a gift, and they have had the advantage of seeing the world longer and understanding people better. They offer priceless wisdom that can sustain you in the long run. Let's join Mary Lou Mintram with her time spent with elders Martha, Edna, and Steve.
Hello, my name is Mary Lou Mintram, and today I bring you greetings from Toronto, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. This has become my home fire away from home, which is Nistrayasa Cree Nation and Treaty 5 territory. I'm Nithiwin, and today I get the honor and privilege to spend some time with 3 survivors who are thriving in our communities. Our first guest is Martha, and later we will be joining and connecting with Edna Buffalo and as well as Steve Wood. So thank you for tuning in and welcome, Martha.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Martha Konya Gregg, and I was a former student at Churchill Vocational Center in Churchill, Manitoba.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a former residential school student in Churchill, Manitoba, and I am married and I have 3 children and 13 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. I'm retired now, but I'm still very busy. I'm a lay reader at the church. So because we don't have a full-time minister since our minister passed away, I've been doing that, but as I said to you, I'm just on my way home from my vacation. So it was really good. And I'm also a midwife. Mm-hmm. And in my work, I've had all kinds of jobs, mostly in the health and social sector. And I was also a health coordinator for Inuit Women of Canada, Poktuti. Then I became their vice president and then their president. Then I started working with former residential school students back home, but I am now retired. But when I still have my clients, so even though I'm retired, I'm still quite busy. Mm-hmm. 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 I'm also a mortician, so from a midwife to a mortician, I get both ends. From the beginning to the end, I have both ends. So,
mm-hmm. How about your community? Do you want to let us know a little bit more about your community and where you're from?
Yeah, my community, there's a little over 3,000 people. And we speak Inuktitut, and we have 2 schools. Actually, we have 3. One is for upgrading. We have elementary and a high school, but they would have to, when they finish their secondary 5, which equals to grade 12, they go to Montreal for further studies, whatever they choose to. They still have to leave their home, but they stay in residence and they go home. They get to go home more often than we did as residential school students because we were so far away from home. So we stayed the 10 months when we were going to school. So, and now it's everything. We could chat by we could FaceTime, but when we were going to when I was going to residential school, it was even very difficult to have phone calls because where I wasn't in Kuujjuaq, where I live now. I was in Kidlinut, which is a very remote place. So we didn't even have telephones. So it had to be a radio, a very public radio phone call. everybody could hear what we were saying. It's a thriving community, and there's quite a lot of former residential school students that are still alive. And and I would really like to acknowledge all those unmarked graves, the former students. That's my very foremost feeling I have. I like to give my condolences to the family members. And, as a former student, this really touches me, because though I was 15 when I went to school, but imagine these young kids, they were babies, like 5, 6 years old, even younger, and they never got home. And that's something that, I feel I'm privileged, not to say that I don't. I very much give my condolences to the family that are watching. And I like to really give them hope that whatever we are going through, especially very close to Christmas, all these things are very important, and it's not too far away from our minds, our heart. So I just like to give my condolences to the family that are watching, and also for the survivors that are still alive, and the family members. I like to give hope. That is something, as a former student, because I got pregnant. And when I got home, I went to Kuujjuaq, where I live now, before I went to Port Burwell, Killinit, where my parents were. And because my grandmother was a midwife, and one look at me when I arrived, and she asked me, "Are you carrying?" And I said yes, and I explained what had happened. And I'm so very glad that she gave me this advice, and I took it very seriously. And she says, whatever wrong things have been done to us, it is very important that we forgive, especially as women. And I was carrying an unborn child. If I want my child to have to become a healthy person, it is really better for me in the long run to forgive. Though you won't forget, but it's better to forgive what has been done to you. And that really helped me thrive, I think. And my faith was very strong, because my grandmother really kept us in faith, to have our faith very strong. And that is what saved me, I think. I really feel that is what saved me. That makes me who I am today. That even though there's terrible things that had happened while I was going to school, away from home, but the things that I went through and overcome those issues, I became, I think, a better counselor, because I can understand. It made me understand how one should want to be treated. When I was going through that situation, I really didn't have anybody to turn to. So I had my faith, and that really kept me strong. And after getting my grandmother's advice, she gave me a chance to look within myself and not to be selfish, that we are to help one another. That's what keeps me going. and I'm very happy that I have a husband that really supports me. So that is something another reason why I was able to overcome these issues. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else, but I'm just wanting to say that you have to take the time and not dwell on what has been done wrong to you. If you want to succeed, you give it to the Lord. That's what I did. And that is something that I still thrive and give advice to young women who are pregnant. I really want to give them advice and give them the tools of how to survive day by day. It's like an onion, layer by layer. You take them off and you deal with it. Instead of drowning yourself in alcohol or drugs, you deal with it. That's how I did it. And I'm very thankful of my grandmother, who gave me that. She had the wisdom to tell me this. So she's a big part of the reason why I am the way I am today. And I didn't forgive just for the sake of satisfying my grandmother, but I genuinely took it to heart. And I really wanted to have a healthy baby, mentally, physically okay baby. And I'm very blessed now to have my grandchildren. So he's on his second marriage. So I'm very blessed to have all these little grandchildren and great grandchildren. So that's just the advice I like to give to people. And I'd like to wish them a very Merry Christmas, and I've saved one. So I just like to hug everybody. Though it's very hard to do it at this time of the COVID season. But thinking of, since we're going to be celebrating Christmas, I like to very genuinely wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year, and stay safe and move forward, because when we walk, we go forward, we don't go backwards. What has been done in behind us is behind us, but we still have to just deal with it one by one, like an onion, layer by layer. And it takes a long time sometimes. And with the grief, it takes so much time. There's no time limit. But the more you dwell on this poor me attitude, it dwells longer. So it's like I jump forward faster. Thank goodness to my grandmother, who took the time to talk to me about life and how we should be, to not be conceited, but to always think of others before ourselves. And even though you may not be treated the way you want to be treated, but you give your very best, and that is the best thing you can be to yourself and for others. Especially when you start work, having been a former residential school student and then start working with students from different nations, like not just Inuit people. It's a very humbling and very rewarding. And it gives me hope that, yes, some of them have a long way to work on themselves, but if taking it day by day, and if we're able to survive one more day, then it gets better. It does get better, though some may not always agree, but as a survivor myself, I can say it does get better with the good support you can have. So that is something that I am very fortunate. I have a big family, and I have a husband who loves me unconditionally. I don't have to prove anything to him. Likewise, he doesn't have to prove to me. We just have this, we're soulmates. Let's put it this way. And he gets me when I'm starting to feel a little burnt out, right? He knows when to take me out of the community. Because that's one thing I have a hard time is to say no. And I'm learning that slowly. So, yeah.
How long have you been married?
It'll be 50 years come February 12th.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that is my message for my fellow former students and to all the families that are watching. So I know it's one day at a time thing.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
So thank you so much for joining me this afternoon and taking some time to share. Before we get started, I was wondering if you can let me know where you're from.
Okay. I'm from, I guess, the Treaty 6 area. I'm from Alexis, Nakota Sioux Nation. And,
Wonderful.
yes.
Thank you so much for joining us with this particular special online virtual gathering. It's about thrivers, or survivors who are thriving. And I was wondering if you can share a little bit more about your journey and
Okay. So my childhood, I grew up, the majority of my life, I grew up in care, children's services. I guess my brother and I, we were part of the 60s scoop. I didn't learn that until recently. So we were in care for a long period of time before we were given back to our mother. So I got pregnant very young. At 14 years of age, I got pregnant. And then I went back into care again. And then I believe it was 13 or 14 days after I turned 15 that I gave birth to my first child. So, we struggled. And then I left her in the care of the people that were raising, that were taking care of us. So they took care of her and they raised her. But I struggled for a long time in my life. I had no supports, and a lot of the times I went into different places on my own by myself. I didn't even know how to ask for help. I think that I got upset and expected, you should be helping me, without saying, I need help, somebody help me. So I struggled a long time like that. So I went in and out of treatment a few times. I had another child at 18. And again, the child went into care at 9 months. So that it continued to repeat the cycle of our life. It repeated. And then I was 26 years old that I had another child. I stayed with somebody there, and they were a little bit traditional. At that time, it was very helpful because we went to ceremony, went to Sundance, and we were able to grow together with our child. And then, but that was, we were living on the reserve with his parents. So then when we moved into the city on our own, it was a little bit different to try to manage our life. I don't think that we knew how, and then there was lots of I don't know how you say it, like characteristics, like insecurities and stuff, and going and being around others. But the transition for us as two people, I think it was different. We did, he did work, I did go back to school, but there were a lot of things like we couldn't factor out the thoughts and feelings of others. We wouldn't overlook that or thought more of how we felt about ourselves without the thoughts of others. So it had lots of conflict, that relationship. So when the child was 4 years old, we ended up, he left, and that's where everything changed again. I started to drink heavily again, and then I got into other drugs and stuff. But prior to that, before I ended up back on the reserve, we had been addicted to prescription pills and alcohol. So those were the two things that I was addicted to. Yeah, but for long periods of time, I would be addicted to one, like prescription pills. We lived on prescription pills for, like, as my family, my immediate family, we were addicted to pills. So we did those for long periods of time. And then when I drank, that's, I don't know, was a means to socialize, but then it became a means to survive, to live in the world, I guess you could say. So there was a lot of things going on. So, but a lot of times there was lots of, up until almost, it's going to be almost 10 years now, that when I decided to go beyond suffering and struggling with my life. Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing your difficult part of your journey, and knowing that you've come out of that in a healthy way. So I appreciate you sharing that. At what point did that change for you?
When I was in addictions, I couldn't live without my kids. And when you're in addictions, a lot of times people, when you have kids, they'll throw your kids in your face because you didn't take care of them. And I suffered a long time because I wanted to be with my children. So it became the driving factor to my sobering up. What initially happened was that I tried to commit suicide, and it didn't end up going that way. So then I got up and I prayed. I said, Creator, help me if you're not going to take me, help me, I said. So then I got up and I remember wanting to be with my children. So then I ended up back in the city. The shelter, they helped me with housing and stuff. So in the process, I don't know, it was a few months, 3 or 4 months, I got to see my son. He was 2 years old. So I went through lots. And then I remember what happened for me was that I really wanted to see my children. They allowed me to see my children once a month for 1 hour, and it was supervised. And they were not very nice when they supervised your children. Anyway, the supports that they had to supervise. So Christmas was coming, and then in November, I decided that I was gonna go to the courthouse to get my children. I wanted to have more visits because I was early in recovery, and I didn't want to go through Christmas without seeing my children. So what was happening, the schedule for visitation was at the beginning of December, and then I wasn't going to see them until January of the next year. So then I went to the courthouse and asked them, I need to see my children. I want to see my children. So what happened was that they gave me documents, and at that time I didn't realize, but when I went to go to Children's Services, they acknowledged that I am serving them. They told me no one has ever served us. And then I realized that we are all human beings, that we all deserve some sort of dignity. So when I give it to them, yes, it's starting to have more of an impact now in my life, because at that time I didn't realize that it was a big deal. Like, you're taking something such as child welfare to court. So what happened is that child welfare didn't do their paperwork properly. So then I was able to see my children. I was able to see them 2 days before Christmas, and it was unsupervised. So then I made lots of effort for my children. And then I remember when my children came home, they came home in I had 2 children that were in care, and they were permanent wards. Like, that's when it's permanent, they call it PGO, and that means that you're at the point of no return. Like, but what happened was that there was hope, because you had to go 2 years, and that after 2 years, they'll know that you are stable and that you mean business, I guess, that you're gonna take care of your children. So that's what happened. So my children came back in August, and I was able to send them to school. And then 2 years it worked. I had we had child welfare status still. 3.5 years that child welfare then rescinded, or since the moment that I first contacted them to get my children back, it was over 3 years. So I made the commitment to do that for us. And then that's when things had started, that I had felt like I was worth this. And because a lot of times when you're in addictions and stuff, you don't feel like you have any worth. Like, there's no hope. So you had to find it. I had to find it within myself to pull myself through these things. Because a lot of times my mind, and a lot of people that have addictions, their mind goes through things where I don't deserve it anyway, so might as well just never. They don't give themselves a chance. So I had to really pull myself through that. And for my first year of sobriety, I had sobered. I had celebrated with my counselor and his coworkers, and they asked me, how did you do this? How were you able to do this? But it was the Creator that helped me, helped me walk through this. I can't say pull me through it. I think it might have been push, pull, or drag that first year. And that's when I was a counselor, I used to say that, push, pull, or drag yourself through that first year. Try not to react, because we go through a part of our life where we just react. We need to say something to hear ourselves say something, but we learn to move through that after the first year. So it was that first year.
That's really good advice. Like, push through the noise. And usually the noise is from yourself, eh? Like, from those feelings of insecurities and doubt and fear. And it gets overwhelming and can be daunting, but push through it, right? So I thank you so much for even sharing that information, because if you push through, like, there's big rewards on the other end. So
yes. So that the year that I graduated, I had also had a son. So when I sobered up, my children are no longer PGO, and then they started to get older. So then my husband and I'm really grateful that he came along with me to have more children. You know, like, people my age, like their grandparents say they'll babysit and give their children back. But I'm really grateful my husband, he decided, like, he and I would have more children. So we have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old as well, along with my other children. Yeah, so when the children came home, I went into the social work program. Went into the Indigenous diploma program, social work diploma program, because what attracted me about the social work was self-care. And self-care, I don't know why it only dawned on that time, but self-care meant that you would continue to be looking at yourself for all the days of your life, continuing to see, improve, and better yourself. So that's why I went into, because of the self-care. So I have to look after myself and see, because I had suffered with resentments and envy. So until I moved through that, I was able to, if I wanted something out of life or anything, I had to work toward getting it. And a lot of times the self-doubt, when I used to go to school and I used to think something I didn't like, or I couldn't do something, I would just give up. I would just stop right there. And then I went back to my addiction or whatever it is, like to feel poor and to pity myself, I guess. So, and then after some years, I was in that program, and then I had a job. It took me 2 years to find a job, but I learned that doing a diploma program, that meant like you were frontline staff. You would get the hours of work that nobody else wanted. So then I started to apply for the Indigenous Bachelor's Program. So then, to my surprise, again, I got into that program, and I was very blown away, but at the same time, I was really grateful. But what I found out was that in that first year of that program, my closest favorite uncle had passed away. And then in that, because my uncle used to be a social worker on the reserve as well.
Yeah.
So then I thought to myself that there was, even my mind had played that game where I should just never mind, or whatever, you can't be this is not, you're not good enough, these kind of things. I had to pull myself. I made a commitment to him and myself that I was going to do this, even though, because a lot of times that the peers, my school peers, used to say that they felt as though they couldn't do this. They thought that maybe they'll just quit. And I used to always say that, we need to pull through. This is not that bad, because it was really tough pulling through and dragging your past until you're, until like a bag over your shoulder, until you're ready to let it go. And it was good that social work programs, because they had healing components to it, where that you walk through your own healing to acknowledge, to walk alongside others in their healing. So it was a really good program, that bachelor program.
Was it an Indigenous-based social work program?
Yes, so they looked at the 4 areas, the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, and the physical. I still have lots of work to do with the physical, but I feel like I can work and myself through the other areas. But that physical, that's like drinking water regularly and eating healthy, something. Exercise too is a big deal, but needs some discipline.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Yeah.
It's really important to do that holistic healing of balance and finding time for every section to walk in a healthy and a good way.
Yeah, because they were saying that they were teaching us that there are areas, like if you suffer in some areas, there is some emotional or mental component to that suffering, and why. So it's lots of practice, lots of discipline.
Yes, lots of discipline, a lot of pushing yourself and motivating, and that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing us with your journey, and even just listening to you from being in the child welfare system, and then also seeing your children, but pushing yourself and motivating yourself to do better and to do good, and getting treatment and help and not giving up. I think that's important. And the words that you shared about that journey and how hard it is, but still having that tenacity, right? Of like, okay, I'm going to do this, not just for me, but for my children. And then going to school, getting your diploma, and then going to university to make a difference in that system that you know too well. So I think that's amazing. That's a great story, and just some of the words that you even shared of how to push through and not give up. I think those are really important lessons. And also the biggest one, even for me, is self-care, and that holistic way of looking at self-care. A lot of people say, well, self-care is going for massages or like what, but it's different for every person, eh? And I like how you broke it down into looking at it as a holistic way of healing and self-care. So appreciate that. I thank you for spending some time with us today. And I was wondering if you can let us know where you're bringing greetings from.
Tan sige tamskatan awa gakyo ananas kumun gatakis ga wapat tama ego eptega e kiswa kis kote muawa tam yopayek naksise. Good afternoon. I greet you all. I'm coming to you from the Musqueam Cree community in Treaty 6 territory, just about 45 minutes south of Edmonton. Morning to you all.
I'm very excited to be a part of this segment. This segment is actually for talking about survivors who are thriving, who are doing really well in our communities. And I just appreciate you spending some time with us to share a little bit more about your journey. And I was wondering if you want to start off by letting us know more about your childhood.
Okay. I would say that I grew up in a traditional home when I was just a little kid. Up until about probably about 7 or 8 years old. Then I was sent off to a boarding school. I grew up in a place called Sad Lake, which is a Cree community about 3.5 hours north of here. From there, like in my home, the drum was prevalent. My father was very much into the ceremonies and the traditions in the community. And then we had a stint where my father had a little bit of a bout with alcoholism, and there was like a part where myself and my siblings were scooped up by child welfare, and then my mother fought for us to get us back. And then after she got us back, shortly after that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of us were scooped up. There's 9 in my family. 7 of us were scooped up and sent to a boarding school just outside of St. Paul, Alberta, called Blue Quills, where I spent grade 3 to grade 12, and I graduated from there. I'm gonna say that I'm one of the fortunate ones, and I'm a bit more resilient than most, I guess, and I'm proven that I'm one of those examples of how resilient our people are for some of the things that we overcome while in our childhoods, and also during our boarding school experience. The boarding school experience, like, there were a lot of negatives, but there were some positives too. I would say that, like I said, I'm one of the people that are resilient. I'm going to say that there was a number of people who were quite touched by trauma from boarding school. I think we all were. But a lot of people, that affected their life in a negative way, and it still probably traumatizes not just them, but everyone that had a stint in boarding school through the memories that we have. Today, I'm doing okay. I shared some of those stories on a previous segment on with the National Truth and Reconciliation. When I first got out of grade 12, and I was thinking about, like, when I was going to graduate, I was thinking, like, well, what do I do now? And all I did was, I had an older brother named Claude. He's still alive. I have an older brother named Claude, who was in boarding school with me and graduated from boarding school as well. And when he graduated, he went to university at the U of A here in Alberta. And I was just thinking, like, I wasn't too sure what I was going to do. So I just applied to several universities, and I got accepted at 4 of them. And I chose to go to the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, where I went out to the following summer to look for a place. And it was the furthest I'd ever been from home up until that point in my life. And I went there, and I got into the university, and I started studying an arts program there. I didn't do too well because I wasn't really immersed in the studies, and that I did manage to pick up the arts degree in that barely. And then after that, like there was a stint there where I was asked to leave the university, to withdraw for a year because I wasn't doing too well. And I'm going to tell you that when I first went to university, it wasn't cool to be Indian. So like when I'd meet people, they'd ask me, well, what nationality are you? Who are you? Where are you from? And I had grown a bit of a mustache. So I'd always ask them to guess. And they'd always guess like Spanish or something like that. Never First Nations or Cree. And I think I was just kind of like probably hiding my identity a bit for whatever reason, probably having a little bit of a stigma from boarding school, etc. The things that were taught to us. When I got asked to leave, I went back to my community, and I got back immersed in what my father had taught us about ceremony. And I started picking up the drum again and singing with people. And in 1982, my two brothers and I formed a group called Northern Cree. And well, we never knew that it was going to do what it's done today. The spirit just took off on its own, and it took us to places we never even dreamed of, which was amazing. Anyway, during that time, I met my wife, Hilda, and whom I'm happy to say we've been together for 38 years.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
And she was a big supporter of mine. And during that time, I reapplied to the University of Alberta, and I went back into education, and I got a degree in education. And then later on, I became a teacher, and I did a couple more things, and I became an administrator for a school division. But it was really the drumming and the ceremonies that brought me back to being who I am, and very proud of who I am. As you noticed, I always open up in our language, because there was a stint where we weren't allowed to speak our language in the school, and some of us, we just never lost it, because it was something that's all was spoken in my home in my early years of my life, and I never lost it. I'm really thankful for that today, because there's a really big fight in a lot of our communities to keep our languages alive right now. Anyway, while I was going to university, my group started to travel. Our group, Northern Cree, started to travel, and we ended up touring most of North America, and have been to several different countries, and we've performed at some of the biggest musical stages on the planet, and we've been very fortunate for that. And I think that it really grounded me and brought me back to who I was, because when I went the second time back to university, when somebody would ask me who I was and where I was from, I was Nahio, and they'd say, "Well, what is that Nahio?" And I'd say, well, in Western languages, that would be Cree. And it's amazing, because a lot of people in Canada don't know what Cree is. For our people, the correct term is Nahio, which are the people of four, right? And I think that's what really helped me in getting my life sorted out, along with the strength of my female companion. I'm still a big part of the drum. I still go to a lot of ceremonies, and the drum is still taking me to places I never even dreamed of. I'm very fortunate. I think for anyone that has been in boarding school, and the people that have come out and turned it into something positive through their resilience. I believe a lot of us, it's because we're connected to who we are in the first place, and remembering those things about our ceremonies, and thriving to keep our language and pass it on to others. I think there's many things that we can help because of the experiences that we've had in our life with residential school, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing your journey and also your gifts and talents. And part of what I love about your story and what you're sharing is that resilience. You know, the first time you went to school wasn't the greatest experience, but you went back again, and also because of your understanding of who you are and where you come from, that helped you be resilient and continue to do continue to go on that path, right? And also with education and the stories and learning of our language and preserving it. Part of that is also connected with our music and connected with our songs and the teachings that come with that. So I thank you for carrying that gift and sharing it with the world because you've traveled all over. With that being said, I was wondering if you could share with us a song.
Yeah, I can do that. You know, Mary Lou, just listening to what you're saying, I think like from where we've been, those places that weren't the greatest, the warmest places to be, and for us that have come out, done something positive because of our resilience, I believe that it's our duty to pass those stories on for our young people, and because of where we've been, it's our duty to ensure that our young people know about our traditions and our ceremonies, and more importantly, it's important that because we weren't allowed to speak our languages while we were there, if we can speak them, it's our duty to teach our children and all of our First Nations children our languages. I mean, considering what we were through and what at the time when we weren't allowed to speak our languages, those things are important. But of this, I would like to sing you a song that is very special to me, and I'll tell you why in a bit.
ask one now for that song. You were going to share more about the origin of the song and why you chose this song.
And I chose it because in the school, we used to have to go down in the morning and get on our knees. And then before supper, we'd all have to go to the chapel and get on our knees again. And then at night, before we went to bed, we all got on our knees again. And it made me think about this thing that we were doing about the prayer. It kind of put a negative light on it for me. It wasn't until that I went back to our own communities and started going to our own lodges that I knew how powerful Kagisimuan was, prayer. And that song just made a lot of sense to me, that it was appropriate for this, because everything that we've been through, it isn't what we do is not religion, it's spirituality. And that spirituality, he was right, it can take you a long ways. I'm not a religious man by no means, but I believe in a lot of our ceremonies and our own spirituality as well. And he was 100% in it, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for taking some time with us this afternoon and sharing some wonderful teachings, and also your music. That was really wonderful to hear, and even just listening to Nidiwa language. It's refreshing, because I'm from northern Manitoba, so I don't get to hear it too much here. So I appreciate it.
You're in my office right now at the school. It's a professional development day. I teach one class along with being the administrator. I bet you don't know. I bet you can't guess what class I teach, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
No.
Huh?
Is it neither one classes?
I teach Nehiawewit. And this here, there's I can read and write Zakbaiganak, which are syllabics. I know the stories behind them. I never forgot those two. Do you know, when I first went to boarding school, about the first 3 years, the nuns and the priests were still there. Mm-hmm. And after that, in the summertime, there was a sit-in by First Nations people. A lot of them came, and they were sitting all over the hallways and whatnot, and they took over that school. Later on, the staffing changed slowly, and our supervisors changed. There was we first had non-native supervisors, and then about 3-4 years later, we had our first native supervisors. And the one guy, his name was late Dave McGillivray. He was the first, one of the first native supervisors there, and he brought a drum to the school. It was most awesome. He brought a drum to the school, and when he asked boys to sit in, I gravitated with them too. And then after that, we would sing almost every other night at the school, which was pretty darn cool. And then they brought in a Cree language teacher. Her name was late Emily Hunter, and she developed the Cree language program, or helped develop the Cree language program at the University of Alberta. And that's who I learned my syllabics writings from. I'm grateful for that. So I'm passing it on to our kids now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. That's so great. And in our community, we have language, like living off the land. And so the elders would take some of the youth in the classroom and go onto the land and do some traditional teachings, but also all around language and in our ways. And it makes a huge difference. And the children love it. They love it, and they connect, because like you say, a lot of people from back home, we still speak our language in the house, in our homes, and we want to connect with our loved ones. So it's important to keep on our ways of knowing, being, and doing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mary Lou, because unlike other Canadians on this land, other Canadians, every other Canadian has someplace else to go back to retrieve their language, their culture, or their spirituality. We do not. This is it. This is where we battle to keep our languages alive and to keep our ceremonies and our identity. We have no other place to go get it back. Unlike all other Canadians who, you know, if you're from Asia, of Asian descent, of some country in Asia, you have a place to go back and get your language. And to seek out your culture and your identity, as well as all Western Europeans, the same thing, you know, and even some of our brothers who are our colored brothers have a place as well. We First Nations people do not. This is where we were set, and this is where our language originates, right from this land. That's what the elders say. It's right. Our language comes from this land. It doesn't come from anywhere else, and that's why it's so important that we work hard to ensure that our young people pick up our languages and pick up our cultures as well, and our spirituality.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great way of like even looking at this segment. It's about thriving, and that's how we're thriving, is because of the preservation of our languages, the preservation of our ways, and not taking it away from all those negative things that have been taught or tried to strip away from our people. You know, I think it's because of people like you who are going, okay, I'm going to keep this going, and I'm going to spend and invest my time with the young people to ensure that it is kept alive, kept going, and being preserved, more than just being preserved, because preserved is just keeping it for now, but keeping it for 7 generations ahead. Right? So I thank you for that.
Yeah, and we can also move on from being let's say angry about what transpired to many of us. That is not our way. At least that's the elder I work with in the school says everything in balance.
Mm-hmm.
And he also says, like, we can't dwell on all the negatives in the past. We have to pick up the positives and move forward to strengthen our own people. And we have things that within our own cultures that we could share with the rest of the world to make it a whole better place to live. Even with some of the institutions or others who have done harm to our or were negative towards our people, we can teach them things and we can share with them. He says that's the way to go, and I believe that. I believe that for betterment of our people and betterment of the whole world. I think he's got something there.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for your time and your words, because even just with what you were saying on how it's like that change of mindset, and then also acknowledging that we all have a part in the circle, and it's not necessarily always going back of, well, what was done before, but also how can we move forward together in that circle, right? So I appreciate that you even took the drum into those places, took our language back into those places, and continuing to share our ways, because that's going to help bridge understanding. It's going to be reconciliation. So it's like taking the time to do those and spending time even just in a Zoom call like this. That type of action is, you know, time commitment, but also the words and the knowledge that you share with us. So I appreciate it.
You know, like I was thinking about what I was doing on the weekend. I was spending time with Canadian music icon Tom Cochrane, along with my group, and I was thinking, like, you said something that was profound about taking the time and really putting our language to the forefront about looking at it in a positive way. I think like every time my group goes out and represents all First Nations people on any stage, even in a powwow arbor, a round dance arbor, it's always with the same intent. It's to show our young people that they don't have to be anybody else. They don't have to emulate anyone. They can be themselves, and they can aspire to some great things. Every time we hit those stages, that's on our mind. That we're opening doors for our young people, and it's all right to be a rock and roll artist. It's all right to be a superior athlete. It's all right to be a worldly profound doctor, etc. But I think, like, if you know who you are, where you come from, your culture, your identity, and more importantly, your language, it'll take you to places you never even dreamed of. I can say that, and our group can say that as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. So just before you leave, can you share with us, like, maybe if there was this, a place that you went to and you're like, oh wow, like we're here? Is there a memory that you can draw in as to where your music was able to take you?
Okay, I'm gonna look at this from two different perspectives. Because for myself, one of the most profound places, the most unique places I've ever gone to is some of the communities in Eastern Canada, northeastern Canada, way in the northern part. We flew into some communities in northern Quebec. And I remember going into this one community, and they picked us up at their little airport, and we drove into their village. And we were driving down their little street, and like there was one house that was surrounded with about 400 or 500 youth. And I was asking the driver, what's going on over there? He said, hey, that's where you guys are staying. They're just all excited that you guys are here. And I thought, wow, that was most unique. And just to think like we're touching our own young people. We're reaching out. We're reaching out to our own young people through devices like this. Mm-hmm. And we're able to connect with them. And when we get to go to their communities, it's something else. It's really special. On the world stage, one time we were in Trafalgar Square, and that would be in London, England. It's a really big square. And we were there to open up for the Tragically Hip. Gord Downey, late Gord Downey, tremendous man, awesome man. We were there to open up for them. And I remember going out there, and that stage was probably bigger than our school. And they had these great big screens. And when we went to do rehearsal, I thought, holy crap, this is huge. Well, when we went back the next day, all the audience was there. 50,000 of them, 50,000. And I remember, boy, we were all nervous as heck, but as I always do, like I said, I really depend, and I have strength in our own cultural, spiritual teaching. So every time we go out to anywhere, no matter small or big, we always light our smudge, and we'll always say a prayer. And we did that. And my palms were really sweaty. Now I'm the front guy. I talk to the audience. So we got out on the stage, and like I said, we always want to show our language and who we are first. So when we got out to do our first number, the first number was all in Cree language, right? And when we finished, there was a 50,000 people. Like there was a short pause, and you could hear a pin drop. Oh, and then there was the light polite clap and whatnot. And then we've choreographed our presentation so that there's no dead time. Either one guy will play the flute, the Native American flute, or we'll do the heartbeat on the drum while I'm speaking. I get up to the mic and I start talking to them in English, and I tell them, like, you know, that we're Neo, we come from Turtle Island. Some of you know it as North America. And I start telling them, like, you know, our music is not much different from yours. In fact, a lot of the lyrics are the same. But don't get me wrong, this ain't disco, it ain't hip hop, and it's not rock and roll. So we start the song, and the lyrics are, this ain't disco, it ain't hip hop, this ain't no rock and roll, or that cha-cha polka dance. This is how we do it, Cree style, round and sing the night. That place went crazy. They just started yelling, man, it was like if you've ever been to a rock concert, it was like that, man, that was most awesome. You could feel like pride, everything, like about who we were. And just because, like, when you looked at that 50,000, you'd be hard pressed to find a First Nations person in that crowd of 50,000, right? There have been other poignant moments. Another poignant moment was when we opened the 2017 Grammy Awards. And it was like the world stage, and it was people from all over the world, you know. And when we opened in that Grammy hall, I'm certain that we weren't the only ones there. I think there was hundreds of thousands of our ancestors that were there with us. And it was like a spectacular, super feeling. I remember that the guys went to the after show. I was just tired, so I went back to the hotel room, and I called my wife, and we spoke for a while, and then I went to bed. And I got up like about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and I grabbed my phone and I checked out our page, and boom, our page had like 6 million hits just overnight, which was like, wow. And I scrolled through the comments, and this one comment said, I'm standing here with my 86-year-old grandma in front of the screen, and we're holding hands, and we're both crying. Wow. You know, like, you know, it was like, for us to be the vehicle, we were blessed, like, just to be the vehicle to be able to do that for all of our people. Yeah, those are memories that money can't buy.
Thank you so much. I love your stories, or all of them were about the people and the people that we come in contact with. Even if there are so many people in a crowd, it's that relationship, it's that kinship. I appreciate hearing your stories. So
for having me. I appreciate you allowing me to share some of my stories.
That was good.
Kakyo nuwagu maganda anak aya ektegus ko temwa mamotawi magaganwim go. To all our relations out there, may the Creator bless you at your home fires. Hi.
Yan ang announcement na.
Hi.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Before we end this segment, I would like to say thank you to Martha, Edna, and Steve. I learned a lot during our time together, and will take what you shared with me on my journey. Your message of keep going no matter what, to be brave, to be gentle first with yourself, and a person who practices compassion and forgiveness has great inner strength. And your words remind me that a connection is a profound human experience, and to walk in love. Leave only ripples of kindness behind you. I like to end this segment with an abundance of
gratitude and appreciation to Martha, Edna, and Steve. Your words of encouragement, your wisdom, and the commitment you've given to your communities are appreciated.
I heard you guys are getting Tom Jackson. How did you even do that? You know that guy is a big deal now, eh? He was on that It movie I just saw. With that action guy? Oh, what's his name? Anyways, I used to watch him all the time on North to 60. Yeah, that time I only had 2 channels. He was good. But you know he can sing too, eh? Is that what he's gonna do on the show? Oh, I hope he sings that Huron Carol. He does a good job. Okay, good. I wonder I could have even done a duet with him. I mean, I'm tone deaf, but he could have carried me. For sure. Maybe next time.
You know, there's a lot to be said about truth and reconciliation. What happened to those 215 children? That's the truth. What's reconciliation? That's what happened. Now what's going to happen is my question. That was the tragic. What's the magic? That's what we're teaching our children, but what are we going to teach our children? That's my question. It's a good time to celebrate. And it's a good time to cherish our family, to our brothers and our sisters, our mothers and our fathers, our sons and our daughters. 'Twas in the moon of wintertime, when all the birds had fled, that mighty Kitchi Manitou sent angel choirs instead. Before their light the stars grew dim, wandering hunters heard the hymn. Jesus, your King is born. Jesus is born. In excelsis Gloria. Within a lodge of broken bark, the tender babe was found. A ragged robe of rabbit skin enwrapped his beauty round. And as the hunter braves tonight, the angel song rang loud and high. Jesus, your King is born. Jesus is born. In excelsis Gloria. The earliest moon of wintertime is not so round and fair as was the ring of glory upon that helpless infant there. The chiefs from far before him knelt, with gifts of fox and beaver pelt. Jesus, your King is born. Jesus is born. In excelsis Gloria. O children of the forest free, O sons of Manitou, That holy child of earth and heaven is born today for you. Come kneel before the radiant boy who brings you beauty, peace, and joy. Jesus, your King is born. Jesus is born. In excelsis Gloria. Merry Christmas. Hoping to play with dolls and toys, or maybe Indians and cowboys. Sister says, don't speak your language, it's just dead noise. Father, you said you came to pray, but I think you're losing control. Please, Father, let me go. I won't tell. No one will know. You broke my heart. Now you want my soul. It's tearing me apart. Where do lost souls go? Where do 215 lost souls go? You get so much praise for your long, beautiful braid. Your life is in your hair. I'll cut it. You say a prayer. Government says we got an issue. We don't know what to do. Too brave and proud, it's true. Chop that totem down an inch or two. You broke my heart. Now you want my soul. It's tearing me apart. Where do lost souls go? Where do 215 lost souls go? Shameful, disgraceful, painful, betrayal, silenced in a deep, dark hole. We'll fix the problem, said the church. Come with me, little girl. This won't hurt. Someone said lift her skirt and lay her in the dirt. If this stays hidden, there is no villain. If you want to defeat the Indian, take away their children. You broke my heart. Now you want my soul. It's tearing me apart. Where do lost souls go? Where do 215 lost souls go?
Hello? Gertrude. Oh, Unishin, that tree is That's the best thing. You did a good job, but how come only half the tree is lit? Yeah. And you couldn't find that burnt light. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. This could ruin the whole show. Yeah, I'm doing a show. I told you that's why I needed this tree. I'm doing a event for the survivors. It's gotta be special, you know. I can't have burnt out light bulbs. I can't just do anything. Okay, well, come over. I need you to do the Christmas village now. Hello? Oh, that Gertrude. She better come do this village. Never mind. Hello, Gertrude. That's the best thing I ever saw. You did that all by yourself. You're finally good for something. I knew this day would come. Yeah, that Christmas tree is still off. The lights aren't working. I guess it's gonna have to work for this event anyways. Yeah, Miigwech. Thank you. If you wanna come over, I got some bannock on a stick I made. It's a little bit dark, but you know, your shapes. Okay. Yaget. Bye. Morning.
Hey ho we ha we ho we ha hey ho we ha ho we ha ya we ha we ha we ha we ya he ha we ya he ho we ha Earth angel, earth angel. When I first saw you, the stars were out so bright. The big squad was under moonlight. Earth angel, earth angel. Now you're mine until the end of time. Hey oh, hey oh, hey oh. Earth angel, earth angel. When I first saw you, the stars were out so bright. The big swan was under moonlight. Earth angel, earth angel. Now you're mine until the end of time. Hey oh, hey oh, hey oh. Hey oh, hey.
From my home fire to yours. Happy holidays!
De mon feu de cheminée au vôtre, bonne fête de fin d'année.